to how Mouse ruined comics.
Okay.
All right, 30 seconds. Your 30 seconds are up. No more boomer music.
I was not sure which one that was, whether it had the musical clip in there or not. I forgot. It's been so long since I did that. Hey, guys, how's it going, everybody? It is Wednesday. It is the Mattriarchy, and we are here to discuss. We have the biggest panel we've ever had to discuss one of Doug's books. We're talking about Power Up by Doug TenNapel. And but before we get into that, how's everybody doing?
I'm cooking.
Excellent.
Hold on, I want to do a shout out to Twitless because before I accidentally plagiarize him. So Twitless gave us like his behind the scenes thoughts, which were eerily like mine, which is that this book is Doug TenNapel in his lane. So Twitless, if I accidentally say something similar, please do not quote tweet me, badly photoshopping one of my drawings to make fun of me. So there you go.
I've been enjoying his really badly photoshopped versions of your drawings a lot.
How have I been missing that?
It's great.
I've seen a couple, but I don't remember any of them.
My favorite is I had a drawing of like a magic rock, and he put Dwayne the Rock Johnson in it.
Yeah, that one was pretty good.
Yes. So, Catherine has joined us. He says, I've got this book. It has very good explosions in it. Yes. Yes, it does.
Does it? That's a thing.
Yeah.
To look.
Yeah.
This is one where I think that Rocket Worm's colors would be interesting to see.
I suppose so. I think
Hutch is
something better. But before we get too far into it, this book was the sort of suggestion of like a year and a half ago of Marmaduke fan.
Yeah,
had picked it up and was sharing it around, and then life got busy for me, and then I had some sort of episode, and crud. Hutch got here, and I overbooked the show.
Beautiful.
Okay, I'm gonna go hit him in private chat. Somebody talk. I'm gonna disappear for a second.
Okay. Well, so we, I guess we're kind of spinning out of like the old Doug TenNapel stream. So we've done a lot of Doug TenNapel books. I guess kind of what I liked about Power Up is maybe this is the coziest one. So now that I've read a bunch of Doug's books, I'm seeing patterns in what he likes. He likes 90s goofy humor. He likes making fun of the fact that he doesn't have the Earthworm Jim rights, and he's kind of salty about that. He does sort of like magical realities where he brings in subtle Christian imagery and ideas of Christian sacrifice, right? So he's weird, and Power Up is it's Doug TenNapel style weirdness, and maybe like less ambitious than some of his, I don't know, maybe bigger worlds that he's created. Like if Earth Boy Jacobus is Doug trying to write poetry, Power Up is Doug writing his fun Saturday morning cartoon pitch.
Right.
Is this Hutch?
Oh,
Which
Welcome, Hutch.
oh, somebody else got booted out for me to join. Hi.
hello.
Hi. I loved this book so much. I'm so glad I was allowed to get in.
You loved it. That's great.
I did. I thought it was. I want to give away the ending, but I really enjoyed. Some things were big surprises, so I liked it a lot.
It is probably the favorite of all the ones I've read so far.
Wow, that's.
Wow. Yeah.
I honestly, I debated even coming on here, and I feel bad if Metal has a lot of really profound things to say, because everyone knows I love Doug, but that knows me, but I find this one to be right in the middle of the pack. There's not much to me that distinguishes it. I think Marm, you just said like the weirdness. There's not enough of it, and there's not enough of him with the Christian themes either, where it's right in the middle. And I wonder if it's he said on Twitter, or X, it's called now, earlier today, he mentioned the autobiographical nature of it. And it got me, the only reason I even came in and kicked out Metal apparently now with my joining is that it reminds me of his state currently, where he is embraced the art of video making as opposed to working at the copy shop, basically. And that to me is the most interesting thing about it, is that it's almost like, how does this talk about Doug now versus
He said it's all autobiographical today.
yeah.
Today I was memeing him with panels from this very book that he was saying it was, but he says all his books are autobiographical, and they clearly are.
Yeah. And it's actually there's some of the thematics in the book are which I'm sure we'll get into. They're really interesting, but they're like
Monkey
it's
ball.
biography that's like twisted though, because there are certain attitudes that the main character has that I know were things that like they're not in the space where I think Doug lives, but they're like maybe where temptations lie.
One thing I noticed about the main character is, I mean, the driving subplot through the story is that he has a video game he wants to develop with his friend, and his friend is like, "Let's go, let's take it, let's pitch it," and he's like, "No, we're not there yet. We're not there yet." And it's very late in the book. I will say this is a small criticism. It's very late in the book that you realize that it's just he doesn't have the confidence to go forward. He says openly, "I know that what I have will get rejected," and he doesn't ever say that like at the beginning. And so for a long time, his wife and his friend and everybody's like, "Let's go with this. We don't want to lose our momentum. Let's take it. Let's do it already." And he says, "No, we got to work on it some more." And it's not clear that he's just lacking the conviction. I mean, you kind of get that, but he finally openly states that like way too late in the book for me to figure that out. But
if I may, it's interesting. You just kind of caused me to think about something. Is the real Doug is a combination of both of those characters,
right?
Especially for those of us that know him, have interacted with him, in private. That the guy is one of a kind, and he's a combination of those two characters. The straight-laced family man is Doug, but so is the Earthworm Jim-esque, drawn crazy character. That's also
what was
Doug.
that, Dwayne or something?
I loved that.
I don't recall. Okay,
Doyle is the weirdo.
Doyle.
Oh,
that's right.
See, and I'm not aware of any of this, so I had no idea, that this is a Earthworm Jim-esque friend or whatever, and so I'm not privy to all the subtext. I only know the text.
I just mean like he's drawn that way.
Sure,
right.
And the game they're making is called Earth Dog.
Yeah,
I picked up on that. Even I can pick up on that. Earth Dog Jim.
Something I want to point out that will probably relate to thematics is I kind of appreciate one thing I appreciate about this book. So I kind of see it like he's not trying to make a grand artistic statement. So I look at it through that lens. He's having fun. But one thing I appreciate is how video games are used, where Doug is presenting video games as both a good thing and a bad thing. In the book, he wants to make a video game, which is a good thing because he has a creative ambition and he's good at it. And Hugh wants to dink around and play a goofy video game, which is distracting him from making a video game, right? So,
yeah,
it's more sophisticated than, oh, video games are bad and they're for man babies. Don't play video games. He's pointing out the good and bad of the temptation.
Yeah, and we've got little dimensions to that temptation that are peppered throughout, right? Like the older lady who's doing a yard sale, where her husband is depicted as like frittering away his life, not caring about his family.
Yeah. Which is some crazy foreshadowing on that one.
Yeah, isn't that's a funny little
Yeah.
moment.
So
like that.
before we get into that too much, let's go ahead and do a little quick rundown of the story as it is, and then kind of talk on that, so we're not getting too far in the weeds for people that did not do the reading, because I think we announced this like yesterday, so 2 days ago or something. I don't remember. It was as soon as I told everybody about a week after I got Marm to confirm that he was available that day. So that's me. That's my life. Okay. So also I've got to say I how much love I have for the Atari controller on these
This threw me off though. I thought that this was taking place in the 1980s when these would be a hot thing. It took me a while to figure out what year this was happening, and that it's actually the current year.
Or whatever, right?
Yeah,
right.
1998 or something.
Yeah, because it's like the character Hugh, who is Doug, basically. They might as well be interchangeable. It grew up in the 80s, so he has memory of 80s Atari games, and his kid's a teenager. So
Right. It took me a little while, because when I first see that at the start, I'm like, okay, so this is like a 1980s type thing. And especially with, the computers don't jump out as being modern computers and stuff like that. So,
right. Well, the book was published in 2010. So
thank you. That helps too.
Okay. Yeah. So, of course, Doug's love of cats. You've got the great cat here. But so the basic premise of the story is that Hugh is a game designer, and he wants to pitch this game, but he's got these life hangups. So he's got a wife, he's got a boy, and he works at Kinko's. That's totally not Kinko's. Also, so side note for those of you people who are familiar with Doug's body of work, there are lots of cars in this one, and every one of them is amazing. Although none of them exist, so Doug can't draw cars. Yeah. So Hugh works with his buddy Doyle, who they both work at Kinko's, and they're working on this video game project. There it is. There's the car.
You're gonna call it as cars? You're not gonna call it those houses?
Yeah. Well, okay. In this one, they're particularly bad because they're supposed to be moving fast, so you actually have the movement behind them. But yeah, okay.
You can totally tell the Calvin and Hobbes influence in these images.
Yeah, isn't that great? Yeah.
That one, that panel you just pointed out reminds me of it was probably like year or 2 years ago, where among the artists in our realm was talking about blurring images, and they were doing it digitally. That image is another example of why you don't need to manipulate it in the computer, how you can convey that same information.
That's an excellent catch there, man. That's really.
Thank you so much for saying that. Yep.
Yeah. See, I thought that, but I didn't have the words for it. I was just appreciating it, like, for what it was, but I hadn't thought about a way of explaining that with why I liked it so much.
So much more satisfying that way.
Right. Yep. And you don't even notice it. Like,
yeah.
Who was it that pointed out these houses? Matt, because Matt wants to troll him, right? But we all, when we read it, whenever we did the reading, nobody stopped and thought about that. We just believed it.
Yeah.
And it does make me wonder if this could even work in color.
I think so.
Well, that's the question for Catherine, not for us, right? Like that's if anyone was going to do it, she's the only one that would know. So.
That's very.
And it need to be, and it's probably a different coloring approach that you might take.
Yeah, that would be a situation where, like, if I was doing the coloring on something like this, like, there'd be, the whole sky and the houses would be one color, the ground would be another color, and then the car and the occupants of the car would look like they'd have differences in them, right? So you'd have skin tones and everything else, but you just have two tones for everything that's not foreground. That's how I would do it.
It is interesting.
It might just make like the entire background one color and just the car white, I suppose.
Well, that could be done too. Okay.
That'd be interesting.
I think it should be photorealistic. We should have a digital brick texture on the house.
Right.
Yep.
Feed this into an AI, see what happens.
Everyone's an anime girl now. Okay, one more thing about video game motif. So like if Hugh is trying to be responsible, like Doyle is the stereotype of the video game obsessed nerd, pretending to be Pac-Man in the car. Narratively, what this is building to is that Hugh gets a promotion at work. He only took the Kinko's job as a temporary stopgap. So it was kind of something about the lovely Mrs. TenNapel. So Hugh's wife, Val, I see the lovely Mrs. TenNapel in that. So his wife is supporting him and trying to give, and simultaneously trying to push him to pursue his goal. So she's not saying you're a loser, you'll never succeed in video games. She's the one trying to light a fire under him to pursue his creative passion and his crappy dead end job that he took to make the bills and he feels trapped at. What's interesting is the temptation is to stay at the crappy dead end job, which you would think would be the responsible thing to do because that's what's bringing in the money. But actually, for a guy like this, taking his shot at creative success, finding an opportunity to break into a creative field would be a good thing for his family.
And so one of the great subplots in this whole thing is that because he's been given this job as manager, he's being asked to fire the old man who's been there forever, because he's just slow. And if he gets to retirement age, the guy's going to have to, the owner's going to have to pay out into his pension because of whatever reason they've got there.
Even though he's the hardest working person there.
But Hugh can't do it. He can't pull the trigger and fire the old man because the old man's the hardest working guy there. Which I love. Okay. So there's all this workaday politics stuff, this family politics stuff. It's all very good, very loving family, all sorts of goodness. I want to skip past it. Not that it's not good, but we can't spend all day talking, so we have to move on a little bit. Yeah. And then we get a breakdown of the game, Earth Dog Jim, right? So here they are on their break talking about it, and this wild-haired fellow shows up to get help with his computer, and he oversees the program. And this is Chekhov's gun. So,
yeah, there's a few of those.
The guy with the wild hair, it's so wild, that something has to come of it.
Right.
Like,
it's
why
like,
is
it's like
he
in a video
drawn that
game where
way?
you see the door that's just the wrong shade of orange.
Right.
And you're like, it's the same kind of thing. Like, this man's about to give us a quest. The other thing I want to point out too that I had not thought about in my first read through is how Earth Dog Jim looks awfully lot like the way that Doug draws a Bigfoot
Bill, yeah,
Bigfoot Bill, and also Flink, and so that's that Earth Dog style to there. Anyway, so
I just noticed it had a similarity to Earthworm Jim, obviously, but also I couldn't help feeling like he brought the same look to what's his name? Hugh's friend.
Oh yeah, and Hugh's friend Doyle also has a very Clayman appearance. So it's got a little bit of the Earthworm Jim aspect too, but I think leans a little more from Clayman from the Neverhood.
Yeah, he's got a vernacular that he's developed.
The way his skull is stretching around and bending, and he clearly is a lot like those two characters. Yeah, Earthworm Jim and
So, which is it's actually the thing I really appreciate about these recurrent visual themes that Doug puts into his stuff. I think I first started noticing it when I read Bad Island after having played Skull Monkeys quite a lot. What I've started to realize is that there's a little shorthand that Doug uses even in the storytelling that's consistent between projects, and so you can kind of see what the code of the thing is within the visuals cues there. So it gives it an interesting intertextual aspect. So okay, moving along.
Do you think the boss is based on anybody, or is that another aspect of his own personality?
I would bet the boss is based on somebody.
Well, it was funny because this isn't nearly as deep or metaphorical or political as so many of his other pieces have been in the past. Yet I couldn't, because of those other pieces, and especially things like Earthboy Jacobus, I couldn't help notice the fact that he was technically Russian. And knowing Doug's, very outspoken, issue with communism, I was like, is there something there?
Well, I think it's actually the other. He's a rapacious capitalist.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Where profit is more important than kindness.
That
Right,
is true. So it
yeah.
doesn't really make much sense, I guess. But I couldn't help noticing how
He's
That
the,
may be an
simply-
inclusion.
He's
of
the
it.
junkyard salesman on Tatooine in episode 1, right?
Yeah,
Right. So I
Only
guess that doesn't really
money.
make sense.
yeah.
It stuck out at me as like the only character who's extremely ethnic in this, and it was very obvious which ethnicity he was using, and just this that connection struck me.
Yeah. I have no inside knowledge about why
I
it
don't-
may have been collected, but
I had a thought on this.
Mm.
So it reminds me of Rat Fist, where the whole joke of Rat Fist is the superhero thinks he's fighting an evil capitalist, but then it turns out the evil capitalist is just trying to cure cancer, and the superhero screwed everything up. So they kind of make a point that these two guys screwing around are costing the business money, and the business isn't doing great. So I really just see it as, I don't think this is a statement on capitalism. I think it's a goofy guy with a funny mustache and a funny voice, right?
I actually see it more as it doesn't matter
Right,
what ethnicity he is, but more that he is an immigrant, and so many immigrants to America have this story of, I got here, I didn't have much money, but I just work really hard at this store, and then that's why I have money now, is because I work hard. I expect you to work hard, and that's that's a very common personality, no matter what country you came from. It's a very common story. So I didn't see him as so much as a commentary on anything, as just you get this guy,
And no,
and very little.
I
you don't
wasn't-
have to say very little. So yeah.
I actually wasn't saying that he was a commentary. I was simply thinking,
Mhm.
Would it be like Doug to specifically pick out the Russian as the bad guy because, of the kind of stories he's been telling all this time, and that he's from that time period?
Oh,
Well, I
I
think
see.
metal-
Like a Cold War commentary. Okay.
right.
Right. Just like
Well,
it's
I
always in the
think-
back
I
of his
think-
mind. And
I think metal actually has something that might fit into this as well. He kind of reminds me more of Peter's landlord in Spider-Man 2, which is in the air.
you're
when Doug
right.
was working on this.
Mr.
So,
Ditkovich.
I was gonna say it's about the same time, right? Huh.
yeah. I mean, it's not
Interesting.
exactly, but it's in the air when that's
It
going
is
on. So
kind of funny.
maybe that was part of the inspiration. Who knows? It's equally possible that I'll find out later.
Right?
So anyway, in this scene, this is where the story changes from being a slice of life, day in the life kind of thing. The two bros are coming home from work one day, and they happen by a garage sale, an estate sale, and there's all of this classic video game equipment, cartridges and controllers and Ataris and all kinds of stuff they have sitting out here, and of course Doyle just drooling over the whole business. And they're going to check the thing out, and they find the old woman goes and complains that she can't wait to get rid of this stuff. This was her husband's. He wasted his life playing video games, which is interesting. An interesting little thing on that. And does this old console work? I have no idea. Something about that just cracks me up. So he buys the thing, he brings it home, he and his kid wire it to their flat screen TV, right? So they're wiring this old Atari kind of thing to the flat screen TV, which I'm not actually sure is even possible, but there you have it.
Yeah.
Right. You'd have to have a
screwdriver
whole bunch
stuff.
of special stuff
Like-
for that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you need an adapter.
To me,
Yeah.
it seems it seems it shows like just how, what out of the current times this guy is, that he thinks an Atari 2600 is going to impress his teenage son in 2002 or whatever.
Yeah. And so,
or no 2010. Yeah, sorry.
right. Yeah. So he's and this is one of those. Leads into one of these moments where it's almost heartbreaking, right? So that he works really hard. He tries to get this thing going on. He's talking to his kid about how great these old school video games are going to be, and he's talking to his there's this conversation with his wife because he went out and bought a video game system, and isn't working on it. Oh, I got a promotion. La da da da. He's playing with his kid, and his kid's like, "I hate this game. I can't stand it. I'm going to go do paintball because this."
Can you scroll back up real quick, Reese?
Oh, to the kiss.
Sure.
Yes.
Right.
Just wanted to come on that. The panel break's intentional there. It's 2 panels on purpose.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed he did that a lot in this book, and he did it for different reasons. He does the 2 panel breaks to show different instances of time in a single scene, and he uses it, I think, to emphasize a point in a lot of scenes.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, what
definitely.
I'm seeing is that she's the one willing to make the compromise and go over to his side of the aisle.
Oh.
Mm.
I actually had a thought on this page that we kind of brushed past. He tells her that he got a promotion and a raise, and it's in the middle of getting chewed out about the fact that they weren't supposed to be playing video games. And it's like the one time it's like she's too angry to, it's like, this is good news. It should be any other time this would be good news, but it's like it's in the middle of an argument, and so now she has to be like, I am happy for you, but it's like you threw that in there and we're arguing. It's an interesting conversation way, because it's like that's not the right time to bring it up, but the way that the conversation, it's like it's very believable, it's very human.
Well,
I like this page.
Well, and it's really interesting from a story perspective too, because he just got done saying to his son, I haven't told your mom yet. I just went ahead and did this thing, and kind of led in with that idea. Well, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission, right? That whole thing. And so you've already got this, like, he clearly loves his wife, has been established already, but there's this tension between them about what makes the home work, right? What are the functions, what are the roles, what are that people need to inhabit in this? And that's one of the interesting things about Hugh in this book, is that he's I mean, there are other characters have flaws. Hugh's are very pronounced. And it's not necessarily a deep work in that. And it's not, but it is something that there's a persistence in the theming about the appropriateness of different people's behaviors and all that. And I do appreciate that.
Hugh is an exaggeration of the overly distracted creative type. He just he's like a manic depressive. He runs out and buys a video game. Apparently like a $6 expenditure is that says a lot, by the way, that a $6 expenditure is a big deal for this family. And I think there's another scene where she's the one calling the bank and making sure the book is balanced. So the wife is the fiscally responsible one. The husband is a goofy creative type who makes her laugh. So I really appreciate how real Val and Hugh feel, where Hugh is flawed, but he's believably like he won her heart because he made her laugh, right? And then the video game is the magical element that disrupts this relationship. So the human element I connect with most is how well Val is characterized in her brief screen time.
Well, it's important that the world itself feel real, so that when they introduce the fantastical element, it actually stands out.
So, actually, Twitless just got here in the chat and says, I found Hugh and Doyle to be two sides of TenNapel's personality.
Yep.
I definitely think that is definitely an aspect of it all. There's more to it than that, but it's almost like they're two sides of they're missing a third. So,
Can I get in here a little bit?
please do. Please do.
There's something missing, and that's the father-son relationship being foregrounded that we get so often in his heavier works.
Yes.
And I'm starting to think that maybe the Doyle character is his other way at getting at that innocent, more childlike trust and loyalty kind of dynamic that he normally draws out from a son character.
Well, see,
I
think
the son of this story is just like a pimply, dumb kid that doesn't really get
and
developed.
I think one of the things that is present here is it's poignant by its lack, right? So, one of the things we have is Hugh and his boy. Forgive me, I forget the name at the moment.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
they don't connect, right? Hugh doesn't understand why his son doesn't want to just play video games, and his son was like, yeah, video games are great, and you taught me this some stuff about programming, design, and stuff, and that's all fun, but that's your thing, Dad. I'm going to be a professional paintballer, and so his son has his own hopes and dreams that are not the father's hopes and dreams. And so Hugh,
it's there on paper, for sure.
Right. One of the things about Hugh's character is that Hugh is baffled by this. He's like, how could you not just, care about video games? But I care about video games. You were raised to care about video games. Why don't you? So personal story on mine, like my kids were raised reading comics, right? And I have one son that really loves comics, not the comics that I like, but he loves comics. In fact, he loves making comics more than he likes reading comics. But my other son can take or leave comics, right? They're just not his thing, right? And so it was one of these things where I asked. There was one moment when I think when my oldest was probably 14. We were in Denver, or whatever, and I asked if he wanted to go to the comic shop, and he's like, "Nah." I was like, "I don't you want to go to the comic shop?"
So it's neat to see Doug use that particular father-son relationship for a different storytelling purpose than he normally does.
Right. Yeah.
That doesn't really get resolved. This isn't like a coming of age story for the kid, and right. One where the father has to reconnect with, his childhood or something.
And one of the things about that is that there is an estrangement of interest. But at the beginning of the story, anyway, there's not an estrangement of person, right? Like the kid's young enough where he's not scarred by his dad's inability to appreciate that they have different interests, and so it's very much a moment in time thing. So I think that's one of the things that.
This is lampshaded perfectly, by the way, when Val says you can't just bribe your son for his forgiveness, and then the son says you're the best dad ever.
Yes, this is true.
The father-son. I also forgot the son's name. The father-son relationship is not the emphasis in Power Up. It's an emphasis in Earthboy Jacobus, and it's an emphasis in Cardboard. I'd say that Hugh's son is only important insofar as Hugh needs to learn to be a father, and that's the human dynamic I connect with. I don't care about Hugh's son apart from the fact that a good father needs to take care of his son. Right.
Yeah.
I have to take the time to interrupt.
We still get this has kind of been addressed already, but we do get the husband-wife relationship, I think, pretty thoroughly developed as we've gotten it in any other book, which is nice.
And it's strong. Well, and it's one of these things too, where we'll get into it here a little bit, the nature of the relationship, and I think the amount of panel space that Doug uses in the first half of the book establishing the relationship between Hugh and Val is so key, because it explains that next part of the comedy, right? Because then this is very much structured like a classical comedy, where we have the situation, and then things get worse, and then they resolve, rather than having the rising tension, falling tension aspect with it.
What I like about his relationship with his son is that it shows more of his personality, because when he's talking to his son wants to be a professional paintballer, he's like, have something else to fall back on, and that's really, it shows his personality where he's afraid of taking that risk, which is what's holding him back from taking the jump to go to EA and say, hey, I want to become a game designer.
See,
He's afraid of that risk because it's not stable, and being a professional gamer is not stable.
Right, that's something I really I appreciate the irony, because he's wanting to get into game development, and he's saying, oh, you need to have a fallback for your paintball thing. Because I'm like, dude, game development is so fly by night. What are you even talking about, Hugh?
Well, Kinko's is his fallback, and his fallback sucks.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing is I hadn't considered, right, that what you were just saying, Hutch, is that Hugh's character is that he's dealing with a certain fear of the future, right? And so he's not willing to invest in his plan A. So he's only living in his fallback,
Right.
Where the story begins. And that's actually really,
At least Kinko's is forever.
Really
Kinko's will last forever. It'll always be there. Yeah, there's always 10 copies. Yeah.
Oh my God, you're killing me.
Difference 15 years makes.
Something about this panel there. Oh, where is it? I'm going to share an image.
Yeah, and I picked up the irony. I got the irony, but it was great. But I hadn't put on the fact about how that lays out there. Anyway, so on with the thing. The kid hates the video game because it's old school and it's 8 bits and it's boring and the game doesn't work right, and so he bails. And then Dad discovers that there's a secret button, and you push the secret button, and a power up from the game comes out into the real world, and I just love. Okay, I gotta stop. Look at this panel. Look at this panel here. The falling, the tripping on the cat, and the falling. Is that just not amazing?
And poking out of the panel a little bit to capture the whole motion. Yeah.
Just the thumb is coming out, the letters are coming out just enough to really reinforce that thing while keeping the reading flow. That's comics, guys. Come on.
Well, and that's where Doug shines, obviously, from his animation background and everything, that when he does a scene like this, it's just so seamless that, and feels so much more alive than somebody who comes at comics from a different background.
It's just nuts.
We don't know it yet, but this is the moment that cat he hates so much saved his life.
That's true.
Right.
That's
You're right.
true. So he trips on it. It breaks it open. The power up gets all sparkly and magical. And I'm trying to remember which the first power up is on it.
Another one of those 2 panel, by the way.
Shields. That's right. So the cat goes to jump on his face. Yeah, it's printed on it, Matthew. It says Shields right on it. Jeepers. Okay. So, which is okay. And this is the kid on the tricycle scene. This is just great.
That's a big wheel. That's not a tricycle. Big wheel.
Yeah. Oh, you're okay. Okay, fine. But
the kid incredible.
Does the coffee spill on him? Go back.
I thought the shield protected him from the coffee spilling on him.
That's true. It did not protect him from the coffee. Maybe the coffee's inside of the bubble.
But he doesn't have the stain on him. See? So
you're right.
That is odd. Yeah, he doesn't pause to show you whether it worked or not. So I inferred that it must have protected him because I don't see any effects of it later.
Right. Doug's comic sensibility would have had him, scalded.
I didn't realize. I thought the idea was that the coffee was what distracted him, so that he almost got hit by the truck.
Maybe.
Well, avoiding getting hit. I mean, here he is. He's obviously panicked. So even if he's not covered in mess, that doesn't mean that he wasn't afraid of it. And then it happens so quick, and then you have the semi.
Yeah.
Which is,
he also gets kissed by his wife in the scene before,
Well, that's not gonna.
Well, that's
you're
not
gonna
bad.
get hurt by
That's
that.
not a
Right.
bad
It's a
hack.
video
Yeah.
game shield. Video game shield knows the difference between kisses and bad things.
But not
Yeah.
hot
Good point.
coffee and
Good
semi
point.
trucks.
Oh, you know what it is? Hot coffee is food, and food gives you health.
Could be.
Maybe.
I can just see Doug working this out. Yeah, I'm sure he made a big list of how the, the shield power up works.
Well, I'm sure that's
Honestly,
true.
this is what I
Think
love
about
about this
No.
comic, though, is the way it makes you think about this kind of stuff.
Let's see. Well, how does it transfer Rocket Worm? He's inside the car. The shield is around the car. How do things enter and exit into the shield? How big is the shield when? No, there's no way Doug mapped this out. I can't believe that.
Hmm.
I just don't. I just don't see him wasting his time.
It also just ends with a punch in the face.
Here we've got the
Like,
so
right.
at the-
Sorry.
no, that's fine. That's fine. We did there's a robber. We'll just scroll down that.
Right.
I love that the great thing about this is the number of times he's been hit. He got hit by a car. He's been shot several times, and the shields are holding up. And it just so happens, right? it's a semi, and let's see what that gun would have, like 7 or 11 in the chamber or in the magazine, somewhere between there.
Impossible to know. As someone who loves drawing accurate guns, these ones got to me.
That's amazing.
So, no fan of Rob Liefeld then?
No.
Oh wait, so Rocket Worm says first it's magic, then it's video game logic. I'm going to figure out the physics. Just give me a couple of hours.
I do like how his art is so cartoony. I mean, look at the hot dog fingers,
Oh,
and so yeah, like when he first cracked that first power up open, I noticed his fingers like practically bending backwards, and at the same time his anatomy is spot on. It's even though it's cartoony, it's at least when he wants it to be,
Yeah.
It's loose and abstract, but believable because he gets motion.
Yep. It's that.
Well,
it's
I'm
that,
liking what the metal says too here. Guy who's worked on video games would waste time every hour.
Yeah, with the number of different power ups the book has, of course, we're not going to get into all of them. There is no way that there wasn't a giant list of all the power ups and how they work.
Okay, hold on. I have
Right.
some thoughts on this. In contrast to cardboard, so cardboard and power up are the same structure of story. It's Gremlins. The ordinary family acquires a magical little thing that throws their life into chaos, and the rules of that magic thing impact them later. I think cardboard is a more carefully thought out version of that story archetype, where he establishes the rules of the magic cardboard and why you shouldn't break the rules of the magic cardboard. And power up to me feels more like a little kid's book, where it's like when a little kid tells a story, they say, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. So I actually don't buy that Doug TenNapel is plotting out every minor aspect of how the magic works. I think he's more interested in the fun of, let's give them some magical things and see what happens next.
Yeah.
What
I was trying to say wasn't
Earthworm Jim was nothing if not a whole bunch of randomness thrown at you for randomness sake.
Yeah, that's clear from you read half a dozen of his books. That's what he does.
Yeah. Well, what I was trying to say wasn't that there would be some sort of like strict magic system that was built in, but rather that the nature of the power ups would take that Doug's stack of 8.5 by 11 or a 3 by 5 cards, and several of those would have been dedicated to different power ups.
There you go. Yeah, this is definitely a guy who has thought about video game power ups, but he may not necessarily care about the detailed mechanics of them.
And Doug is not a person to allow the rules of a video game power up to determine whether or not hot coffee can spill in a man's lap inside of his comic.
Which we never got a definitive answer to.
But
Well, I don't know.
the point is
Maybe
like
we'll have to ask him. He's like,
that's
okay, okay.
I mean that's the question.
Oh, are we
why
gonna
is
have to
there
invite
not
him on the
why is it not
stream?
more obvious?
Did
Well-
the hot coffee burn you? We need a word from God, canonical decision. There is no death of the author.
Somebody
That's
call Doug. Get him on here.
No, I'm not going to do that.
Well, it is his own homemade coffee, so it's not as hot as the McDonald's coffee.
Right.
Yes.
So yeah, he isn't necessarily scorched to death.
Okay, I got to take the time
I
to
do
point
love
out
this.
joke. Look, this joke is great. I stopped an armed robbery at work, but no time to talk right now. Hey, no kiss?
Yes, it is.
Oh, sorry. I don't think that would be appropriate.
I love that gag. That made me giggle too.
It caught me. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we're getting on the thing. He's playing the game, getting more power ups, and this whole segment is about trying out different sort of stuff. So I want to skim past this to talk about what the world is. Oh wait, actually, we got to talk about this thing here. So we've got all these kinds of different power ups that are going to change Hugh's life forever. But then they find the Lord Dumas.
The character in the game, is that a tie? Is he wearing a tie?
Oh, he must be.
Oh.
This is something I've been
Or is it
thinking
a
about
V-neck
as we've been
shirt?
going through. Is that was it when Catherine said earlier in the chat about it being about she didn't say naive, but eager or something like that. About the perils of working in the video game industry for eager artists. It makes me think that that's not just the ending where they go into it, but also this engaging with the video game itself. Like the character in the video game represents it as well. And that guy right there, Dumas, he also represents the video game industry in a way.
Yeah.
And that's something I was thinking because she said that, and now that I see that character in that panel, I think, is that a tie? Is that character
insightful. Mm-hmm.
Is he a video game developer?
We'll get to a glimpse at Lord Dumas later. This is our foreshadowing, by the way. We got exactly one panel. This is critically important for me.
Yeah.
So not if I scroll you off screen. Great. So, like I said, I want to scroll past this because
you did scroll past the continue. I will mention there is a continue flag. That's important.
Oh yes, that is very important.
Can I skip that one?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Yeah, there it is.
Okay. Yeah.
He drops the continue flag. It pops up, and there's a continue flag. Yep. Gotta be more careful. Okay. So, hey, the triple shot makes more money. There we go. Well, I'm glad I went back to the continue flag because that's a plot point too.
Yeah.
You're buying.
Now, does that count as printing money or counterfeiting?
If they all have the same
logic, I don't think it counts.
But they all have the same number on them, so
they would all have the same serial number. You're right. Yeah. Wow.
First thing I thought of is you can't do that too much.
Nice touch, by the way, that so it's the temptation of using power wrong. So, why would it be wrong to use this video game power? They immediately use it to counterfeit money, and they're not thinking about the way they are using the power. So it's like drugs. Drugs make you feel great.
And it was at this point, it made me think, especially because back in the day, this was so much more of a thing. Nowadays, we have mods, so this has pretty much disappeared. But the concept of cheat codes in video games, something here that is actually designed to be part of the mechanics of the game, has actually become a cheat code when it's taken out of the game.
Yeah.
Yep. So, one of the visual gags I wanted to touch on here, just because I think it's so much fun. So he's got a health up potion, power up, which he puts on an old busted car.
Yeah.
And he ends up getting a hot rod. So.
And it doesn't wear off, apparently. Yeah, the shield, we were talking about how the shield lasts long enough, and then it just stops. It doesn't seem to have how much damage does it take or whatever. But
think about it though, a health potion would not wear off. Here's some extra health now. In 30 seconds, we're going to take it back.
Yeah, well, the thing is so like it would, if it adds health points to you, then the car is going to lose health points at the same rate all cars lose health points. So
And
it took
this
me
was
it
the
took me
point.
15 years for my car to turn into a real pile of crap.
But see, here's
Is
the
it-
point at which I knew that the thought of this comic was going to be worth it, because now he's able to use these on objects other than just himself, right?
Mhm.
And so not only does he another can do. This was like, oh, it's just complex. Power up.
That was real.
Power up. How do we start thinking about how this
Cartoonicus,
affects every aspect of life?
Cartoonicus,
Yeah.
you roboted really hard.
Oh, I did. Okay.
We missed all of it.
Sorry.
It was really musical,
Of
though.
course, I
I'll
hate
tell you
that.
that much for free.
Yeah, I wanted to set that to a beat.
Blame
Could we
Elon
use
Musk.
an upgrade? It's still really bad right now, man.
Darn
If
it.
you go out and come back in, it'll probably reset.
I think that's
No,
probably the best option. Yeah,
It'll
it's sometimes
wear off
that helps.
eventually. You guys do the same thing every couple of minutes.
You need a power up. Yeah.
That's the
Hmm.
ticket.
Yes.
So,
Did someone want to speak to
I'll be
the
silent for a
that
bit.
double the panel at the top where the wife leaves
Yeah,
the
let's
warm
roll back
embrace of the husband? I was just wondering. There's I forget who made the argument that
It was me.
that happens intentionally. Do you think that that's
I wouldn't be surprised. I'm interested to see
Yeah.
at the end of the book if we have them together.
Mm,
In
My
one
one
panel.
problem with Doug is I don't know if it's symbolic or if it's just, hey, I think this is cool. I will do this today.
I just like to
I mean,
draw this. You know?
Yeah,
the
I
thing
was-
is, though, there is definitely, I think, whether he intended this to be a symbolic separating that we're seeing here, this is definitely the point of the story where Hugh starts to become dependent upon the power-ups. And he's not trying through his own efforts to improve his life at all. He's just using the power-ups to improve himself, right?
Oh, that's
And this
interesting.
is the moment in
Yeah.
the story where that happens completely, where he's just bought into that idea of the easy way out of the life of ease. And before that, he's playing games, but now he's bringing it home because like his wife's like, oh, I'll go get some matches.
Yeah, he
so
brought it in the house.
he
Yeah.
brought it not just in the house, but into that relationship with his wife, right?
But
Mhm.
his wife noticed. Okay, here's what's weird. So in this movie archetype, the movie archetype is the liar revealed, where you're hiding something from your wife and she doesn't know, and then at the end of the third act, you get caught. And here, he just breathes fire in front of her, and they lampshade it.
Yeah.
Right. But his answer is telling. He says, you don't have to get matches anymore, right? He's just saying like he's committed to this life of ease, this life free of risk, this life free of labor, this life free of effort, right? Because he's got the power-ups. And so it's interesting then, I think, in looking at when you have the old woman who said, oh, my husband wasted his life on these video games, and Hugh is actually separating himself from life, right? He's having material benefit. He's having, and he's having all the good feels of life, but none of the labor that makes it happen. And
The video
one of
game
the
makes
things
you feel powerful.
right, exactly. So here's one of the things where one of the things that really hit me with this. I'm going to tell a little story myself. I really enjoy Fallout 4, the video game, right? And part of the reason I enjoy it is I like the story, I like the setting and everything, but I also like the idea that you get to build these little communities and patch up these buildings and grow your crops and do all the urban planning stuff, right? So it's a little like Sim City, but you also get to shoot zombies in the face, right? So there was a few years ago when and in the winter I'll sometimes play video games more than in the summer because I don't have as much to do around the house because it's cold, right? So there was one time in the winter a few years ago I was playing a lot of Fallout 4, like get up before work to play for a couple of hours, right?
Nice.
Well, it was my day off and I was there and it was like 10 or 11 o'clock and it was like April. And I'm sitting there harvesting my fake plants. And I realized I haven't planted my real garden. I haven't even been out to the garden that year at all. And I said, oh no. And I put the game away and I didn't touch it for like 12 months. Well, not, it was probably 9 months. Because I realized in that moment I was getting all of the emotional good feels from tending my fake house and my fake garden that I should have been from fixing my actual house and tending to my real garden, right?
Yeah.
And so that's one of those things where I was like, wait a second. And I think that's similar to what we see Hugh going through in the magical world here, is that he's getting the stuff of life, right? He's having a semblance of life, but he's missing the actual meat and potatoes of the lived experience. It's a simulacrum, right? I can never say that word right.
Simulacrum.
Simulacrum.
It's interesting
Well,
to
I
me.
can also. Sorry, you go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say it's interesting to me looking from the outside in at Doug. This character of not going for it, not being willing to step up, not willing to put his ideas out there, is so opposite from the Doug that we know.
Yeah,
going from drawing for Attack of the Killer Tomatoes and just like being the hardest working guy there to working doing video game stuff, to going and pitching to Steven Spielberg, to going to CBS and having a failed cartoon, and actually going for that, working on the Earthworm Jim cartoon, to having a failed cartoon, to going and having another one season show on Nickelodeon that some people like, but only one season, where the other people from that time frame, things, went on for years and years, to all these things that he's done to avoid working at Kinko's, to avoid being a teacher. Like Doug has said, I don't want to be a teacher. I do this to not be a teacher. Like he doesn't want to do it. He said it. And so like this character, although autobiographical, where does he see himself as being like this character, as getting complacent, being lazy? Where does he see himself doing that? Because from the outside in, we don't see it. At least I don't.
Yeah.
Well, for all we know, that could
with
be a challenge that he has had to get over all his life, and we just see the result.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I can really see that where you're coming from, Daniel. And I'm not saying I'm not trying to say you're at all wrong, Dr. Tunicus, but I really see that perspective. I also think that part of this is like there's an the understanding that the artist is putting forward that these are the temptations that all people face, right? That idea for complacency, that idea to not explore the new worlds, and I think that's one of the sorry,
never heard of him.
You throw me off. Somebody else talk.
And it's interesting. I mean, I'm not saying one way or the other. Obviously, everybody has to fight against that laziness and the man inside that wants to have the easy route. And I think those of us that create, and something that we like about Doug is that he seemingly is always doing something, even if it's Carrie Lake videos.
Right.
He is making something. We may not always like it. We may want him to do something else, but he is doing it.
That's not the Doug I remember, to quote the weird, the goofy side character. That's not the Doug I remember. The Doug I remember was passionate about making video games, not sitting on a gold toilet. and not needing to work anymore.
So with respect to like the trolling Doug thing, so I don't know about you guys and like what your relationship with Doug is. My last interaction with Doug was somewhat salty. I think he was saying something like anime is of the devil, and I kind of like told when you were making comics, right? Because he's doing the Daily Wire, poning the libs thing now, I guess. And on the one hand, I don't begrudge anyone who, if you crack the YouTube magic algorithm and get the YouTube bucks, by all means, crank out the YouTube bucks. But there are not enough weirdo conservative Christian hyper manic creatives. So I kind of wish Doug would stay in his hyper manic creative comic dude. And I think his response to me was something like, well, I can't make money in comics, but I can make money doing that. And so maybe that's just the answer. Like the YouTube is what's paying the bills right now. But with respect to this comic, it's about like a manic creative who is also afraid of his own laziness, and he's afraid of failure. And it's easier to not try and never have the answer than to try, fail, and realize that all of your effort was for nothing, right? Like there's the temptation is to quit so that you never realize that you didn't have it in you.
I want to add to that, actually.
Go ahead.
Okay, that because I think if I remember correctly, it was Doug who said the great thing about comics is that you don't need any prep work. You don't need people. You can just sit down with a piece of paper and a pencil and start making something, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And when I read this comic, and it's all about him trying to pitch a video game, and then of course at it's obviously about Earthworm Jim, and at the end you've got that line about the having to sign all his rights away to the company and all. I wouldn't be surprised if Doug is a guy who loves video games, but doesn't love animation and the work that it takes to go through, which I can understand. And so he started out in video games, 30 years ago. He ended up doing a lifetime of comics instead because that was something that worked better. It may very well be now that YouTube is simply the next thing that is working and that he can do, and he knows, has figured out how to do. I have to commend someone who is able to jump from one thing to another and not, dig in their heels of like, I do this one thing, and if I can't do this one thing, I'm dead. He figured out something he can do, and he makes it work.
Well, and like if you ever like, I don't want to just spend the whole time talking about the everything that Doug has done that I think is cool, because that wouldn't really, I think that would defeat the purpose of looking at the book. But I do think that the number of different genres of things that Doug has worked in, and some of them have been real flops, and some of them have been really good. That I think that does speak to that drive, and I think it is specifically interesting in relationship to Power Up, because we just see that Hugh is very much stuck in a rut, and instead of pulling out, and his need to go the next thing is getting distracted. Although, in terms of like looking at Hugh's arc as being some sort of corruption of his character, which I definitely think is a factor in here, I did want to point out this scene, which is in this whole scene, because it's first of all really funny. And second of all, it does speak to the underlying goodness of Hugh, right? So he's been told to fire the old man, and he's never done it. And the boss is like, you fire him or I'm going to fire you. This is the last thing. So what does he do? He gets the ghost power up, and he smacks the old man, and he just becomes invisible. It's like he's still going around naked. His implied he's just going around naked copies and taking care of everything. Just invisible for however long.
It reinforces how he's not willing to do the work, because he's just pushing the problem down the line, because the guy's still going to get paid. He's still going to. That's right. The problem's not dealt with, and it's that part. It's so strange, because that it's
not a solution.
Yeah, it's not a solution. It's not going to work. Like there's a floating spray bottle.
You know,
But
and it's like I said,
hilarious
it's
the
a
idea that
cheat code,
the
right?
floating spray bottle exists for however long, and like it doesn't come up until like the final part of the book.
This next panel I want to talk about, by the way. So if the earlier panels are arguably there for emphasis,
Mhm.
this is usage that is clearly meant to represent two separate moments in time.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay.
I also wonder how much Doug makes decisions based on changing
Oh,
things
sure.
up, making sure that things don't get stale. It's like when he uses just a, profile of a character or something, and silhouette. Is he doing it? Is he trying to say something with it, or is he just doing it to vary the images? And I tend to think that a lot of times it's varying, but
I think you're right. I think
If
it's
you will look at
sometimes
Super
both,
School,
especially like if you look at. Oh, I'm sorry.
His son's
saying,
name
if
is
you look-
Maddie.
That's the embarrassing. Yeah, that's hey, that's embarrassing. But what I was going to say was that in relation to your comment there, Fly, I think that one of the that I think it's definitely can be both in different books. I think that a really good example of that is Black Cherry, because so much of those spot blacks are intentional tonal pieces, but there's also a lot of that is simply meant to draw the eye in rather than being a narrative point. And I think that's a really good example of him changing up those techniques even within the same book. But
and one thing that is, I don't know if it still exists on the internet today, but Doug's process has been viewable more so than I think just about any comic book artist, especially one as good as Doug, where he has had for years videos up on explicitly how he does his process from step,
I
A
think
to Z.
Odyssey
And so,
Channel still has that stuff on it.
yeah, I hope so, because it's valuable information, and we know that his thumbnails are detailed, and that before he goes in and does them, he's worked out layouts and things like that. But I don't know that he's at least not what I've seen, that he's commented on the why of things, just the how.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I interrupted you earlier, Cartoon, because what we're talking about?
Well, I was just going to point out that if you look at Super School, you will notice I'm doing stuff like that all the time, just looking for ways to, interrupt the flow, make it look interesting, and half the time that can actually save you a lot of work anyway. So.
Yeah. So, I forgot about this scene. This is a great scene. So,
Yeah. Okay. So we are getting a bit of this, the father son. Like we all forgot Maddie's name. So Maddie isn't cool enough to be on the paintball squad. So Hugh decides to help Maddie get on the paintball squad, which Val thinks is really cool. That he's looking. He cares about his son. He doesn't care about paintballing. He cares that his son cares about paintballing, and he wants his son to believe that he can be a great paintballer, and then the magic power-up screw it up for his son later on.
Yeah, and gets him kicked out of paintball forever. So, we'll
this
take
is
a
like
look
that
at the giant paintball quick.
greetings, fellow kids moment.
Yeah, right. So
go back up. Tangent. Is the tangent purposeful?
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Seems like that.
It looks like he tried to disguise it. He might have tried to disguise the tangent by moving the rock over.
Yeah.
Yeah, there could be some whiteout on the original page somewhere. Move stuff around.
I love the gouache. This is insane. Well, and so in this scene, after the scene, we'll skip past the rest of it there. But Maddie gets kicked off of the. Not only did he not make tryouts, but he's banned from paintball forever. And the wild thing about that is that it's like how would anybody even like? I mean, it's such an aberration of nature. The giant paintball with the massive wave of paint and everything. It's the kind of thing where it's like, how would that work out? But
how would you explain
So-
that?
how would you even
Yeah.
explain
I
it?
have
Yeah, how would
heard that there is apparently such thing as a paint Zuka.
a great legendary WMD of paint.
Yeah,
So-
it's odd that their reaction is, "Well, you're not allowed anymore," rather than "How did you do that?" You know, it's like, yeah, it's almost a, what would you say? It's like an unreality sort of that. This isn't really. People would be freaking out if your husband suddenly, breathed fire or, manifested a huge ball of paint in a wave. It's just,
Mm.
yeah, but they don't react that way, so it's kind of the unreality of the comic book world, even though this is a very realistic story, except for the supernatural elements, it's
I have a theory about that I'm going to get to at the end.
okay.
I just banned him. I got the metal. I just banned him. I ain't got time to care. So, to speed things along, Hugh got fired from his job, but when the old man rematerialized, found out the boss found out he didn't actually do the job, so he gets fired. And so that's okay. The wife says, "You've got the game design. You can finish up. You could really go for it, I suppose. What are you doing? I'm going to play my game, right?" And he's just completely falling into this avoidance, this unreality, right?
Mhm.
And so then they keep playing the game. He's got coins, and they hit the button, and all of the coins pop out, and they're gold. So he's got all the money he can hope to have. He buys a house with gold, buys a helicopter with gold, buys all the video games, which somebody's going to start asking questions about where all this gold is coming from.
Mhm.
Yeah, somehow at this point, his wife starts asking questions after the helicopter. And
Yeah. How are we going to pay for it? Why do we need it? All that
it's
kind of
fine.
stuff.
It's cute.
Yeah, it's great. It's
It's good pacing.
yeah. This is great. He buys the kid a room, which is a paintball bedroom. Maddie's not stupid. He can't buy his forgiveness. We talked about this earlier in the thing.
Yeah.
You're the best dad a kid could ever have. But this represents this continued separation between Hugh and his wife, and of course, I love the extra life. The second player character with the switches on his chest. That was like some crazy stuff with all of that.
You like that?
I do. I don't know. I don't know what other people thought about that though. I'm curious.
I have a thought. So I keep contrasting this with cardboard. Cardboard is using his book Cardboard is using the magic cardboard as a vehicle to tell a story, and I think it's a way about framing magic. So in Cardboard, the way they use the magic cardboard propels the story. In Power Up, he falls into his universe just keeps getting more and more surreal. So not only can he make copies of himself, his copies are self-aware, and they just instantly kill them, and no mention of this is ever made again, because
the thing is, are they actually self-aware, or are they clones of him and thus just acting on the same knowledge?
Right. They say they are self-aware. Like there's one where one of them says, "I am self-aware. What did I do wrong?" Click. They kill him. So
and they argue with him, and they obviously have a difference in will. So
Hutch called it a non-reality or surreality. So this isn't magic functioning as like a hidden part of the world anymore. This is now magic taking over the reality and breaking down his reality. Like things are not making sense anymore, but they're not making sense he's lampshading the fact that things are not making sense anymore for Hugh's life.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Actually, go back. Can you remind me? I want to remember what the power up is and or looks like here.
Oh, the
Is it a one up?
extra life, or
It's just a dude.
it's an extra,
The dude.
That's-
just a dude, yeah, an extra dude.
Is lampshading? I have a
If
dumb
it's an
question.
extra
Lampshading, does that mean that's like hand waving, right?
I'm sorry, that's like a TV tropes thing. I quoted the forbidden
No,
site. So,
lampshading goes like this. You have an animal character, say, who doesn't wear clothes, right? Somebody walks in on them in the shower. Ah, don't look at me. I'm naked. He puts on a hat. Okay, now I'm good, right?
Yeah.
It's particularly pointing out that silliness that you know is there, but instead of trying to fix it, we're just going to make fun of it. And then
you're
Right.
putting
And-
a lampshade on the character's head as you acknowledge the absurdity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Okay.
it comes from the movie trope of the guy at the party wearing a lampshade on his head, that he's that caught up into the party that he's just
Right.
all the rules of normalcy have separated, but all of that. So
Oh, neat.
it's
What I was kind of referring to was like at one point his neighbor's dog is barking and he throws it into another reality, and
that was freaky.
there was never a moment where the neighbor's like, "Where's my dog? Did somebody do something to my dog?" You'd never address that in a real world. Even though we keep saying, this has real relationships and seems very realistic slice of life stuff. At the same time, it's an unreality where you never have to deal with the fact that you threw the dog into another dimension. And is there even food for it up there? You don't know.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
That's video games.
Yeah.
Right? When you play a video game, you deal with all this stuff. You can die, you're killing people, and none of it matters. At the end of the day, you turn the game off, and life goes on, right?
The thing about this comic that distinguishes it from a lot of Doug's work is that it is about that character right there. And it's about his relationships to everyone else around him. And the other characters, although they seem real, are not as fleshed out as many of his characters are. So we I don't think in this comic we would expect him to have to face too many of the consequences of the actions that he does.
Yeah.
And the dog is the perfect example of that. Like the dog being gone, it should affect him in a different comic, but not this one, because it is about him, and it's just a distraction from him.
Mm-hmm.
If he would have to deal with that.
Yeah.
Are we okay if we spoil the end of this one?
Yeah, because it's a good ending.
Reese,
Okay.
you're muted.
Yes, Matt, you're muted.
Kind of all
curses.
together.
I was going to say I think we will go and spoil the end. So if you guys are really keen on not having the end spoiled for you, I will tell you we're going to skip some of the intermediary steps for sure. But you just tune out. We'll say, hey, here's the end, and you can leave. Because here's one of the things I really wanted to get into the situation. We've got this. So in the mansion, you've got all the duplicates that are running around, and so Val says, "Hey, honey." Hugh says, "Hey, babe." Then Hugh number 5 says, "Hey, honey," but I just so she got the consternation face, which I just love. What's going on
Extending
here?
off of her skeleton into outer space, like hyper cartoony.
Yeah.
There's a really obscure comic, probably none of you are familiar with it, but it also deals with somebody splitting themselves and causing a problem with their significant other. It's called Watchmen. I don't know if anybody. But I thought about that as I was reading this earlier. I thought,
that's amazing.
Sounds lame and dorky.
Yeah.
Comment of the night.
So she catches the other Hughes in the thing. Hey, this is great. I finally got hired help. He's hired all of his duplicates, and one of them is just playing video games in the background. Is this panel not just great?
No.
So
This is what we all wish we could do in life too, right? Is have a million versions of ourselves to get everything done that we want to get done.
no,
It also it demonstrates that he's willing to work, because if these are extensions of himself in some way. He's willing to do the work, but he's not. At the same time, he's not. He's fighting against it. He's finding ways around doing it, even though he knows he ought to be doing it.
Yeah, I think that's So we have the real one doesn't have an off switch. Scrolling. So we have this. One of the interesting things about this too, the decline of Hugh, right? It's really slow. I mean, the book reads really fast, but it's not like he goes through a couple of these missteps and then everything goes terrible. It goes slow in incrents, and
there's no montage.
It reminds me of that. Oh, I can't remember who said it. How do you go broke? Slow at first and then all at once, or a little at a time and then all at once, right? And that's Hugh's life gets to the point where once he's got squid arms, his wife is completely, out of it.
Over it.
Yeah, completely over it. Takes the kid up and leaves, and that's that. That's not it. But
yeah, as Isaac Larkin says in the chat, now it's an anime.
Yeah, I've seen enough hentai to know where this is going. Yes.
Oh boy.
Oh my.
You've seen hentai?
That's a very interesting.
No, that's just a saying.
It's a meme, I swear.
It's a meme, I swear. Okay. So the wife has left. The husband is just dejected. He was just dejected. And he goes in. At least you could have taken the stupid cat. And so the cat comes in, and who is it? Oh my gosh, who's climbed out of the computer?
Okay, does he have a tie?
Oh, he doesn't have a tie. Does Hugh have a tie in this moment?
He does. He does have a tie. He's got a suit and tie.
Oh,
I don't think that the video game character was a tie. That looked like a jacket or like a V-neck or something. It didn't look like a tie to me, but anyway, I'm sorry to spoil your theory.
It could be. I'm just asking the questions.
Oh, hello, it's Lord Doomis, right? My name is Hugh.
Why did he name the character Hugh? Because with this font, every time I see it, it looks like Hush. I had to correct it every time.
You didn't notice what he says later on? They're actually going to explain it.
It could be for the joke. Yep. Yeah.
Hugh Man, yeah.
Oh.
To go back to the video game character, it's very plain. They're especially compared to Lord Doomis. Like it's not like you couldn't have a pith helmet or something in that style. Like it's very deliberately a Hugh Man, just a regular Joe. I think even if it's not a tie. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So great action scenes on here. Scroll. Oh, I love the rockets. And it's just like it's so great. And Doomis is like the stereotypical video game enemy, where every time you think you got a handle on it, he pulls out another skill, right? Another level to beat him.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's probably obvious, but it's definitely really a roughly jab it. It's not a tie in the video game.
Yeah. I love where he uses the video game cabinet to protect himself. And I'm like, there's nothing cheaper than a video game cabinet. That thing would be. It comes up when he gets blasted through the wall and the video game cabinet is still intact. Like that.
Yeah, right here.
Little unrealistic.
The use of smoke and explosions in this is just top notch. I don't think I've seen much better.
That's really good.
That is good stuff. No.
Yep.
Yeah, if a video game cabinet could be impregnable, that would be, really good looking.
It was made by Nokia.
Yeah.
Well, to answer the question, Ethereal Dragon says, "Where's his force field?" That's what he's looking for in the bag right before he has to dodge those. So
that's right.
So he's asking the same question you're asking.
Yeah.
So you can't escape me, Hugh. Okay, so here we got the car, the souped up car. And here, once again, he's the villain levels up and turns himself into his own motorcycle.
Oh, there it's Human. That's
Right.
what you're referring
Yeah,
to. Yeah,
there you
okay.
Yep. I see you, Human. Yep.
And
This
suddenly
got referenced earlier. So I mentioned, like Doug's Christianity. So if Earthboy Jacobus is Doug explicitly talking about Christianity in the book as a plot point, Fly Fox, you mentioned like there isn't like a Christian point. I will note though that the bad guy looks like the devil, right? He's tall, he's wearing black armor, and he's got the devil horn. So that's the closest we get to direct Christian symbolism in this
And
one.
I just think it's right there in the middle of this one. It's like,
Yeah.
it's not that it's not there. It just what I like most about Doug is the creature tech willingness to just be explicit and it not matter where like people will read that book regardless and know exactly what he's talking about, but it doesn't matter because it's Doug. He can do it.
I think this is Doug in,
Well,
I think this would be a fun Hollywood movie mode. So he's not in, I want to speak poetry about Christ mode. This is like this is from Tron.
Right, and it's all preference,
Yeah.
right? Like it's all preference.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things here too is it isn't a different register, but it's also, this is more, I think the overall story is more about the values than about the foundation of the values. It's the living out of principle rather than about the principles themselves, right? So in some of his works, Cardboard is like is similar in that, where it's not necessarily explicit faith statement, but it is like but it's more blatantly about the truths within that directly flow from those faith statements. Whereas something like Jacobus, where the Christianity of the characters is actually a plot point within the story,
Right.
Or Creech Tech, where it's like, literally part of the plot.
Or Ghostopolis with the the airmen with the nails. It's like there is. It's hard for me to explain just why this one. It's probably because Ghostopolis, Creature Tech, Black Cherry, these ones with the explicit stuff are my favorite ones by far. That this one just seems.
Yeah.
Well,
and
I think one of the things about,
for sure, he's taking less risks.
Yeah. Doug was a big contributor to Breitbart's Big Hollywood, and the editor of Big Hollywood, John Nolte, would often refer to what he considered the best Christian movie was The Bad Lieutenant, which is not an explicitly Christian movie, but in what it evokes and what message it has in it, is a very Christian movie. But it's it's full of swearing and drugs and violence and nudity and all the sorts of things. It's like that's not what you first think of when you think of Christian movie, whereas you think of something like what Kirk Cameron is putting out right now.
Right.
But that's one kind of Christian movie. Another kind is the parable. And this is more like a parable. There's nothing overtly Christian in it, but it is all about the message that you get from
and it's utterly dependent upon the social norms that are built upon that theology and philosophy, and the I mean, even in the way that Hugh is not living up to his duties as a husband. Why should those duties exist? Well, they exist because he's supposed to be imaging the love of Christ for his wife, and what he's doing is simply, pleasing her and pleasing himself, and nothing beyond that.
Right.
And that's implicit within it. But like to Fly Fox's point earlier, like Black Cherry, which is absolutely an R-rated book. I mean, it's it's every bit as graphic as a Tarantino film, but it's also explicitly a Christian in every, not every page, but the themes are about, because it's about a fallen person who learning to he needs to seek redemption, and all that kind of stuff. So
and Doug has that unique ability to be able to do that with where it's not the Kirk Cameron type stuff. It doesn't feel like that, and that's a skill that he has that I place a high value on, obviously.
And I'm not trashing Kirk Cameron's movies. I'm just saying that's, they're more typical of what you think of when you think of a Christian movie,
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's all.
I agree.
Yeah.
Also, I'm pausing on the scene because I just love this panel here.
That is so great.
It's a great panel.
Yeah, to Fly Fox's point, I mean, you've seen Doug take risks in storytelling that we might struggle to think of anyone else who's gone that far in comics, who's alive today and who's made comics. And so when you see someone do something that's just a good story, then I don't know, like maybe there's it's like, can you hit it clear out of the park with a home run again, please? Like, so don't just get me to third base.
Right. Okay. So here's a parallel, right? In sort of, there is a line in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Ben Affleck and Matt Damon are in the movie, and they're talking about some sort of movie, and they say some days you make Good Will Hunting, and some days you make reindeer games, right?
Yeah.
And I think that there's that there is an aspect of that, and that's one of the things that's because like not everything can be Jacobus, not everything can be I mean, even Bigfoot Bill, which is in some ways it's a silly little story, but in other ways it's this ridiculously complex story about
that's a great example.
Belonging mean.
Yeah, there's nothing explicitly Christian in Bigfoot Bill, right? It's just family. But if you can read into that a whole bunch, particularly because he's such a public figure, like he's voluntarily such a public person, and we've seen him in his stories be so autobiographical, and take it all the way to the finish line with explicit Christian themes. So when he's subtle about it, it's worth discussing, I think, because he's not always subtle.
Well, I want to tie into something Fly Fox said from a different angle. So if you want, we talked about Doug's different modes: fun mode, Christian mode, weird mode. If you contrast Power Up with something like Rat Fist is Doug at his absolute weirdest. I am thinking of the scenes right now in my head, and I don't want to spoil them. I actually don't like Rat Fist. But
I'll do Rat Fist next.
That's maximum weird, and this is Doug trying to rein in the weirdness a little bit, and trying to rein in the Christianity a little bit, and make what would kind of like be a solid pitch for a Hollywood script, I think.
Yeah, he probably did option this. Isn't that what he talks about with these? That the point in a way was to option it. That's where the
that is the way they are able to generate more money than sales. So
there is still depth to this one, and it's like Doug's not. I think he's incapable of putting his Christianity into everything he does. It obviously is something that he thinks deeply about, and it's the worldview in which he writes all of these things, and so it's there. But I guess there's just something about these crazy ones, that they're inexplicable. Nobody else can do them, and
this one doesn't have painful moments, where you're really like stabbed in the heart.
Yes,
and we can say that because he's done that.
Oh yeah.
Three or four other books.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I read Cardboard, I finished it up. I was sitting in a hotel lobby, and I was at a conference, and I was waiting for my coworkers to get down so we could go into the thing, and I'm sitting here reading this book, and I cracked up crying in front of 20 strangers. It just hit me clean through.
I want to praise something. So I've said that this is a less ambitious book. So what I want to praise is when he gets to the climax, he does bring in a self-sacrificial idea. And what's cool about that is Hugh's character arc, Hugh's flaw has been he's avoiding responsibility. He's avoiding doing what he needs to do.
Right.
The completion of his arc is he willingly sacrifices himself for his family. So he stops treating his life like a game. He believes he lays down his life to stop Lord Dumas. And then the twist is the continue pops up and he resets to before he started deliberately screwing around with the game. So he gets a chance to live his life over again without using the power-ups to cheat this time. So in a sense, it's sort of like this whole experience has been like a dream. He's gone back in time to that earlier moment and all the weird surreality he and his family experienced, that's been deleted. So I think that happens. I think the continue is before he deletes the dog out of existence. So
I think it was just after, but
it was okay.
It was just before. It was just before. That's right. It was just before.
I love how subtly that flag is there. They mention it once. They're like, "Oh, it's a save moment, save space flag, or whatever you call it."
Right. And I didn't even see it as a save space at first because I simply saw the Mario flag and I was like, "Oh, it's the end of the level. It's a random just goodie they threw in there." And then at the end, they're like, "Oh, totally set that up."
Yep, for sure. Well, so let's go ahead and talk about that a little bit on the thing, since this is absolute spoiler territory. We kind of already did it, so
but we're skipping past a lot of great action stuff.
Right, there's lots of great action stuff.
There's
other character stuff we're skipping too. So,
well, in the nature of this comic, because it sets up the video game logic. I mean, you wouldn't expect there to be a depressing ending. Like it's obviously going to go. The status quo is going to return. And
right.
Yeah.
So Hugh has magnetized himself in his car under the bottom of this overpass. He's run into a pylon. He's had a big crash and he's losing his power-ups. He goes to jump for them and Dumas catches him, sweeps him up, hits him and says, "Don't kill me, I have a family. And here's this great moment. Thank you for telling me. I'll go take care of them right after I'm done with you." Which is possibly the most terrifying thing in this entire thing. I mean, just the expression on the face here and everything. That's just there's some horror on that.
I would contrast this with Bigfoot Bill, where Doug has put that scene in there about I can't do the right thing. I have a family, and that's something that he's talked about outside of the comic that I really picked up on and thought a lot about. And he is Doug is willing to lose everything for the sake. I believe that he's willing to lose everything for the sake of his beliefs. He's done it before. He is willing to do it again. And this scene, when I read this earlier today, it just reminded me of that. Like, Doug wants to be this. He wants to do this. He is willing to save his family, but he is not willing to compromise his beliefs to keep a job. Basically, he will find another way. As his character does.
So, and we got once again, great explosion. Gotta shout out the explosions.
Now, here's what I want to know. What kind of power up in a game allows you to completely destroy yourself in order to beat the boss?
Right.
Especially in a level-based video game where you're only going to be going back to the previous checkpoint.
Well, the closest that I can think of is in Skull Monkeys, the Universe Enema, but it only knocks you out. It doesn't kill you. Kills everything else, but it knocks you out. So. What am I hearing?
Sorry, is that my phone? I'll
well,
put
maybe.
myself on mute. Sorry.
It was in-universe video game sound effects.
That's why I was just like, wait a second. Somebody's got themselves a power-up. You're going with me, power up, Isaac says. That's grand. So he wakes up and there he is at the save point. What's that one supposed to be? It's a continue flag.
I thought
This
it was
is some
odd.
serious
Has
power
anyone
to have
ever
right there.
heard the term
I'm sorry?
continue flag?
I've seen continues. It reminds me of those things in Sonic where it's not a flag, it's like a ball, and you run into it and it spins around, badoo, and then that's where you pick up.
It's the midpoint flag of a Mario level.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right, but
and
have
they
you
have
ever
a
heard it called a continue flag? See, I think about the word
No.
checkpoint. And the funny
Yeah.
thing is here that it's a C for checkpoint, right? Like,
right.
it was just odd to see that. I was
Yeah,
like, oh,
well,
where'd that come
I suppose that's probably fair. They also use them in Skull Monkeys as well, but
I mean, what? Okay, so the conspiracy theory hat. If there's such a thing as continues, there's such a thing as finishing flags. So maybe the idea is a continue flag is a way of presenting the idea without a gamer getting it. Like if it was a 1-up mushroom, I would say, oh, okay, he's going to die later, and that's going to be his new life. But because he says it's a continue flag, and that's not as obvious a thing, then even if you know what a continue is, you forget about it for momentarily, so you can be surprised by it later.
That could be.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Also, it's not relying on gamer lingo as much. I think it just makes it a little easier for broader audiences.
I don't know.
I
You
was
had
thinking
Big
the same
Bullet
thing.
earlier. I mean, we all know that one.
That's true.
So Ryan says one of Doug's good tropes is the use of the conversion or rehabilitation of a secondary character that he does a good job of setting up to hate. They deserve the worst and they get redeemed in the end. That is very true. That is one of the main points in Cardboard, in Tommy Source Rex, in well, those two pop into my head in a minute.
Novus has it. Yeah.
Yep. So
No, I don't. To answer Ryan's question, I don't think that there's not really.
No, because I think the only character that is consistently problematic, that other than like Maddie, the son, is just a little kid, so sometimes he's a little impatient or whatever. But
you'd think if it
himself,
was, it would be at the
kind of-
store.
Yeah.
But it's not. That's why I say, like, this one sort of stands out from a lot of his other books where it really is about this character Hugh, and it doesn't. The secondary characters, like I said, they feel like a real character, like Doug is capable of doing, but they all seem to just relate to him, like in a different way that he doesn't, that not in the other books.
I said I had a theory earlier. So the fact that he goes through all of this stuff, then dies and ends up going right back to where he was in the beginning, right? You were saying how he's basically disconnecting from reality. He's living this, diving deeper and deeper into this unreality. He goes upstairs saying, I'm just going to keep playing my game. I know there's some stuff that happens slightly before the flag, and the flag is still in there. Still, I want to see this as this has all been going in his mind as he sits there in front of the TV, diving into this video game, sees the possible future in it, right? And eventually sees himself basically destroy himself and realizes, like you said with your, what was it about Fallout, right? Okay, I got to get off of this thing.
Well,
And
if you want to take all the
snaps
magic
himself
out of the
it,
story, sure.
right? At the very least, I think it's a cool metaphor.
Yeah. Well, I think the metaphor definitely stands in place because it's not just the video game itself that's the issue. It's his reliance on it for and how he comes to define himself by it, right? And so here's one of the great things is he's got these power ups and he smashes the machine and they just poof, right?
Right. Meaning, once again, like they weren't real without the machine, right? You know what I'm saying? Right?
But the contrast with where he got it from, when the old woman says, he didn't have a relationship with his children, he was not a good husband, not a good father, and the essentially these machines led that guy down that path, and
Right.
that's the difference between Hugh and that guy, is that he's willing to smash the machine. It's not going to be around for someone else to have the same end.
And it's like Ebenezer Scrooge. So did Ebenezer Scrooge just have a dream, or did Ebenezer Scrooge really meet the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future? And you don't need an answer to that. What's important is that the experience of the supernatural transforms Ebenezer Scrooge when he awakens from whatever it was.
Yeah.
My favorite line from that is he will live the spirit of Christmas all year long, with the spirit of Christmas in his heart all year long. It's like, regardless of whether or not the three spirits are there, the spirit is there. And that's the difference.
But I do want to point out that to help Hutch, if you want to use this can help answer your question about why are none of these people really acting the way they should. It's because this is all in his world, in his mind, right? And everything, like you said, Reese, is that the whole thing is revolving around him. Everybody else could just be how he's seeing them, right?
See, you can play that game, Cartoonicus, because this story, unlike a lot of it, maybe unlike any of the other stories we've read of Doug's, where the relationships between characters are greater than the sum of the parts, and that's really the core focus.
Right.
It's between the father and the son. It's between the husband and wife. Like this being where there's only one main character in a way. That this is a different opportunity for him to kind of play to a different set of skills, and one that can kind of give you the sense that maybe are we dealing with main character syndrome with the main character?
Well, he is the main character.
Yeah.
Well, and that does bring up one other thought I have about this ending too, is that the fact that once he finally gets past all that, it ends with him basically creating and pitching and going on to create Earthworm Jim, right? He said this was autobiographical, right? Does that just mean that this is his origin story?
Well, it's
that he
the
was a kid
timeline
caught up in playing games and wasting his life instead of doing something, and eventually
the key line we skipped over is Val says to him, "Let me know when you're ready to stop playing games with yourself." Which
I like
that is a real world comment where the entire plot of this story, you can tell like that line was a pregnant part of building the story. You might have built this entire scenario around that line.
Yeah, that's good. Mm-hmm.
And this came out in 2010. There is, Doug putting the company that they go to work for being EA is of course on purpose. By 2010, they had buried everything that he had ever done. So never to see the light of day again. So there's definitely something to that.
When Doyle's like, it's the greatest game company ever, and then I'm thinking like, oh, the irony.
There is kind of like a nice double subversion where first we have the line making fun of how bad the game industry is, but then the second line is it's the closest thing we have to paradise on Earth. So it's like,
that's down here.
The corporate world sucks, but the promise of the promise of work, it's like going to Hollywood, right? Like Hollywood may suck, but the dream of making it big in Hollywood isn't a bad dream.
Well, so here's the thing. Riddle me this, because I don't actually have an answer. I thought how odd it was, especially knowing that Doug's a Christian. You would assume the line would always be, I think I died and went to heaven. It's almost as if he specifically avoids that here. What do you think?
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. Yeah, you're right, because I'm used to died and went to heaven. That we're in another, like, is this just Doug writing something, or is this Doug trying to communicate some cryptic knowledge to?
Well, is there a reason as close to heaven as possible? And I'm like I said, I don't have an answer. I'm trying to ponder what could be going
He's
on.
good about
here.
no throwaway lines, you know. So like add a little bit more seasoning with a unique word, you know. I think that's in his wheelhouse. He doesn't want it to just feel like you won't notice it as much if he said died and went to heaven. You'd just be like, oh, I already know. I read the first half of that phrase. I know the second half. I've heard it so many times, you know. But if he puts paradise in there, it's a little extra. You know, what's that extra ingredient in that sentence? And that makes
Well,
you think.
apparently
It's different connotations. Paradise would be Eden, right? So we experience paradise on Earth, but we don't experience heaven until after death. So, okay, here's my cryptic hat. So
now you're doing it.
You can't experience heaven on Earth.
I just thought it was seasoned.
Can I just say that as somebody who, when I started reading this, I knew Doug's name, but I did not know that it's like I didn't know his history. Is like I had to go read his Wikipedia, and I'm like, oh, that's right, he created Earthworm Jim. I didn't even remember that. It has been so long since I've read anything by him and all that, and so when I'm reading this, not knowing his whole backstory, this ending is very weird. That it's like, hey, I wouldn't make you do a rapacious one-sided agreement that gives me all the rights. It's
he's making his own little. It's because that literally had to happen to him in real life, right? So,
right.
And like I said, it's like, is this his origin story, right? This is the making of Doug TenNapel.
Well,
all his origin story, absolutely. Yeah,
I think I definitely think in some ways. I mean, it's one of the things that, like, when you think about, you know, Doug in 2010, you know, he was writing for Breitbart, he was making comics with Image. I think this is before the Scholastic deal, right? So, he basically at this point by 2010 he was pretty much persona non grata in Hollywood at that point. And so he definitely there's a little bit of I would be surprised to hear that there wasn't at least a little bit of salt intentionally thrown at those sort of things, because he'd had a you know, he of course he knew he was giving up Earthworm Jim from the jump. That was part of the contract. But also you know, the whole deal, DreamWorks video games had sacked and buried all of the Neverhood stuff, never to be seen again. And that was not that far before this. So I would be really surprised if that wasn't a factor in all of that. I can't even imagine a world where that would be the case, to be honest.
But if you don't know this backstory and you're just reading this as a story, this is a very odd, like it's really throwing a clanger in there in what's supposed to be the happy ending where he makes the right decision to go to work for the video game company.
That is so interesting, because obviously for the rest of us who are deep in the lore, it's not we just look, you know, I overlooked it. At least I can speak for myself. I overlook it as like, well, of course Doug would put that in there, but here you are, this innocent babe in the woods, so to speak, and you get there and you're like, whoa, what?
It's obviously not there as a natural consequence of the story. It's the natural consequence of the author.
It does remind me of the end of
let's go up here. Get up here.
Sorry, what's that?
Twillis is saying he's got something he wants to say for a second.
Oh, he may be saying what I was about to say. I'll drop out.
Out.
No, what are you going to say?
Me out if you want to bring him in.
Also, does Metal want to join?
I was literally, I'm so funny. Literally right as I was, as Cartoonigus was about to completely preempt exactly what I was going to say. So I'm unnecessary. That's fine. Because I was going to talk about the ending of Earthboy Jacobus having a similar thread. But I wanted to put a spin on this, perhaps. Don't know what you guys would think about this, but the idea that we sometimes in literary terms, we call this where the text misspeaks, where the text is kind of pushing a particular message throughout most of the story, but then isn't comfortable with having a neat bow. And so needing to kind of have a moment where the text kind of goes against its own idea to unsettle what's settled, right? And so in Earthboy Jacobus, for our audience, Earthboy Jacobus is the story with a huge fight between an evil empire. They defeat the evil empire. You know, there's marriages at the end, there's kids. It's got this very fairy tale ending, but the final panels of the story are the evil empire basically striking back, and like the war not only not being over, but like hopelessly being outnumbered. And it's like this very interesting thing, because it's not set up from the way the story is typically with the way the structure has been speaking. And this very moment right here it's done comedically, so it's not done in the more cynical way I would argue that Earthboy Jacobus does it. But in this story, it's wink wink. By the way, Doug, you know, you're losing all intellectual property to something very close to you. And those of you I know who are very familiar with the lore have seen on Twitter, Doug engage with people who have celebrated him losing, specifically Earthworm Jim. And obviously, like, it's very clear he's talking about Earthworm Jim in this story, and how that, you know, that's something he struggled with, obviously. So in a sense, what we have here from a literary perspective is, again, the text kind of setting up a story with a comfortable ending and a comfortable message, but then inserting consciously or subconsciously something that unsettles that. It's something it's something like Alan Moore has done, for example, like in V for Vendetta or Watchmen, right? The ending of Watchmen, right? You have that whole setup, and then there's the diary that completely unsettles the whole thing.
Yeah, except that he interprets that as a bad thing, and everybody else interprets that as like hope,
right, exactly, yeah. But like Miracle Man does the exact same thing. So like Alan Moore is very, very much like working in the same mode of, like, you know, having a story and then, like I said, having it misspeak or unsettled. And I've noticed Doug doing it too, where it's like, which is interesting.
It's separate, but it's impossible. Like, thinking about the worldviews that Alan Moore writes from and then Doug writes from, like, you can't separate Doug from his worldview. Like, no ending of Doug's is truly hopeless when you know that he's writing from that Christian worldview, right? And so, like, in the context of it, like, it doesn't have the hopeless feeling, regardless. Know that, like,
that's the point. That's the point, though. That's the point that I think is fascinating, right? So the point that I think is fascinating is that they're both coming at it from the opposite side, right? Because Alan Moore is definitely much more, he's an anarchist, he's not particularly cheerful. And so he sets up these sort of like quasi dystopian / utopian moves and then undercuts them. Doug is operating from a place of hope throughout the whole story, but he injects a little bit of unhope at the very end in some of these. And that's the part that fascinates me, because typically a Christian narrative, what you're saying, Fly Fox, right, would be like, you know, hope, going through darkness, but we end on the hopeful note because we know how this all ends. And Doug is, like I said, unsettling that narrative a bit, which I think is, like I said, very fascinating to me. And it's risky for a Christian creator to do this. That's my thought.
Well, and isn't that why he separates himself from so many? It's like maybe that is why, because he creates truly in that worldview, but without having or thinking he has to explain it all to the reader. And so often, you know, there has to be the gospel message, and, you know, and the ending of Fireproof or something where they reenact their vows or what, you know,
right? Yeah, exactly. Facing the giants, right?
Right.
Yeah.
They they learn the lesson, and Doug's characters don't permanently learn the lesson. Like, this guy is going to get Earthworm Jim taken, and he is going to go on to do more like Doug did. And that is there. It's kind of present in that he has learned a lesson, but you see that trouble is going to come, but he's going to work, he's going to do. But then for those of us that know the lore, you know, Doug did go on. He has gone on. He's done more things than most people do that are worth experiencing.
Yeah, I guess my final thought on that is that from a musical perspective, he's put one sour note at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So what I'm thinking about, so since you brought up Earthboy Jacobus has a shocking ending because it's despair. But your inference is it's almost like you could read it either way. If you're a Christian, your inference is, well, there's a child that's been born, and the child that has been born, I think in Earthboy Jacobus, literally his blood is the key to like defeating evil. So your inference is, well, there's despair and darkness has triumphed, but there is a child who can defeat this darkness, right? Who may rise again and come, right? So if you have the Christian context, you can bring that into the dark ending of Earthboy Jacobus, or you may not know that, and you will just come completely like haunted by it because it just seems like they must all die.
That's what we were talking about way back when we talked about it, and that's what I was going to bring up, was that the fact that, you know, clearly the ending of Jacobus is a message to all, you know, of us. Evil is always going to come. It's never stopped. We have to constantly keep fighting against it. But if you miss that point, all you get to see is this massive, unstoppable army coming to destroy them. And it's like the most horrifying thing ever. And it's the same thing here with Hutch not realizing anything about Doug's past. It's like, for him, it's this neat little reference that he's put in here, you know, in his little shot at EA. But if you don't get that, it's like, well, that's a really weird thing to end on.
I really just, even beyond like that final edition, I just think that for a Christian creator to be willing to insert a deliberate sour note into the ending of a story that's influenced by a Christian worldview, to me, the risk that he's willing to take there, I do find that to be noteworthy. It's something that I almost more than anything is going to be something that I will take away from reading this particular work. It's like that realization is.
Yeah. And it's like one of the things. And I think that it's one of the things that Andrew Clavin says is that Christian art shouldn't necessarily look like Christian life. and if we are trying to understand, because you know, art reflects culture and culture reflects art, but it's not necessarily a one-to-one, because you don't necessarily you may want to read about the Charge of the Light Brigade, but you probably don't want to live that, right? So
Yeah.
So by the same reasoning, and not that there aren't people that do, or that, you know,
I get you.
Right. But similarly, like when you look at like even this piece, right? You know, if you can avoid making the mistakes that Hugh makes, and Hugh can avoid because he's got the continue flag, then you'll have a happier life by not making that mistake to begin with. But that doesn't mean that you as the reader can understand that unless you watch Hugh make those mistakes to begin with, right? Which, you know, and so that's one of those things where I think that's one of the things I draw from it. I think that the sour note at the end of this, at the end of Jacobus, I think that the you know, needle through the heart at the end of Cardboard, right? They're there specifically because there is what's the word I'm trying to think of? That vicarious aspect of it.
I'm trying to remember
because like I said in the comments earlier, hope is not without suffering, right? And I think that it's important to remember that not every story gets to be an Archie story, right?
Yeah. Is Cardboard the best story by Doug TenNapel? You all keep mentioning it.
I like it. Okay, it's
my favorite.
It's in the upper tier.
Okay.
Cardboard is my favorite.
Okay.
So,
I have not read it, so don't tell me the ending.
No.
Yeah,
Although it's something about a needle in the heart, apparently. So
yeah, it's
okay.
it's a real heart wrencher. Of Doug's that are my favorite, my personal favorite, Cardboard, Jacobus, and Creature Tech. Those are my top three.
Okay.
Although like the Bigfoot Bill is, like, as far as a comic work, it's probably one of the best comics in terms of like the whole visual language of comics.
Okay.
Yeah.
I really like the moment in this book where his wife points out that all these things are cheats, that just they get him rewards, but they haven't developed him. He's not making progress as a person and going after his dreams. even though your dreams should hopefully get you, gold and all the riches and everything, but just jumping to that and getting actual gold and actual, mansions is not your dreams really. And that what she wants him to become, the job that he wants to do to develop as a person. I thought that's a really good moment in this, and it's one we skipped over kind of, but
Right.
it's really the heart of the book, that all this stuff is just a cheat, and it's not. I don't know. I really did love this. I think it did have a lot more than just a big action story at the end, and then cutesy little happy ending. By the way, I was on mute when you were all discussing, its similarity to Christmas Carol and all that. And I should point out that there is no doubt that he was visited by 3 ghosts. That's never in question. He didn't just have a dream, because he'd never met Bob Cratchit's family, and yet they all turn out to be exactly like what he saw in the dream. So,
true.
yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
Break all of our theories with your facts.
Just pointing it out.
Hey,
I was in the audience and thinking the same thing.
I was willing to go along with my theory about this, even though he had the shield before the flag. So, I mean,
yeah, they are real.
So there we have it.
Well, and the symbolic reality of it is that he is regenerate. So obviously the spirits did have the interaction, because he is regenerate at the end of the story. So I agree with you. But
the transcendent reality is real. Yeah.
Right.
what's this?
Oh my gosh. Is that the last page?
It certainly is.
Oh my God.
Can you make that full so we can see it?
Yeah.
Can you
This also is another tearjerker. Let me find you here. This is the very last page of Creature Tech. Oh nice. God. Lucky.
Good grab.
It wasn't luck that obtained this for me. It was dinero. But yeah.
It's fair.
Amazing what just a bunch of black ink on a white background can do.
Oh, it's so.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, man. That's yeah.
And that's not I'm not pulling it out to be like, oh, look what I have, but rather to just say that is the final I think that's always Doug's final word in a book.
Yeah.
At least that's how I read them. I don't need to be full screen anymore. I mean, my vanity is well known, but we don't need to feed it.
Yeah, no, and I it's yeah. I'm gonna go back and read Creature Tech. I think that's a show. I think we've said everything there is to say. At it, we're just a little over 2 hours. Thank you guys for coming on. I do not have next week's show figured out, you viewers out there in the audience. I do know that at some point in the next 2 months, hopefully the next month or so, I want to do Rat Fist.
Buckle, Buttercup.
Yeah.
I've never read it, but just the brief description makes me interested, so I'm going to be on that one.
Oh, hey.
Look who just came in the chat.
Who just got in the chat.
Whoa! Quickly, bully him.
He's got 2 hours to catch up on.
That's funny.
Well, I'll say that I wasn't even on here for most of it, just so we can make room, but I actually really enjoyed this book. This might have been my favorite Doug thing that we've discussed, at least when I've been on. So,
yeah, I also enjoyed it. Although this is not meant as any sort of insult, Doug. This is not my favorite of your pieces. So
it's my guiltiest pleasure, Doug book.
It is actually my favorite, which is simply because of the interest factor, though. It's not because there are definitely better, at least more deep stories that he's written. But I just can't get past I love those kinds of things that make me think, that make me have to put 2 and 2 together. And so it was just I think perhaps guilty pleasure is a good word. It's just I read through this comic so fast, because I was just flipping every page, like, oh, what's gonna happen next? What's gonna happen next? What's gonna happen next?
See, I don't the guilty pleasure thing. Like Black Cherry exists, so like I don't.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I'm gonna just be honest, like I just put it in my top 3 as it is, but
Yeah. Black Cherry's really, really good.
If
I
this
thought
is still
this-
in print, I'm going
Black
out
Cherry's
and buying
probably my
it
number 4 though.
to have a copy.
So
Well, this is the best TenNapel book I've ever read. So,
newbie.
but I
Well, you're in
I
for a
think,
real treat, man.
well, I
Did you
think
just
this
say
did
TenNapel?
whatever. I'm sorry, I goofed it up. But
it's okay. It's Dutch. It's fine.
but what I'm trying to say is the thing that really connected with me is the being safe versus going after your dreams, because I think that probably connects with everybody who's ever tried to do something creative. I mean, I know I've had a number of times where I've thought of taking my comic book to Kickstarter, and I've seen so many people do Kickstarters and come up financially short, and they still had to meet the demands of everybody. It's like, oh, I way underthought how much money this is going to take, and
Right.
and they struggle to get everything out to everybody, and it's like, it's so intimidating, and it's so, pulling the pin on that is like a tough thing to do. And there's a lot of that stuff where you go up against that fear, and you're like, oh, I'm scared to go across this threshold. So it's like that. In that way, this really connected with me, because he obviously, the character Hugh, lives in that same worry, that designing video games is much riskier and less reliable than the steady job, even though the steady job is just working at Kinko's. So I think that was a really good, I don't know, the story really connected with me for that reason. So even though it's a game about, a book about video games coming to life, So enough about me. Somebody else talk. Everybody's going away.
So I have, for 8 years now, been working on a video game of my. Oh, hello.
Oh,
Hey.
Oh no, Matt, you don't get to.
How's it going, Doug?
the boss. Everybody behave. The boss just arrived.
I have a question, Doug.
Apparently, the lovely Mrs. TenNapel is the boss, according to the lore of Power Up. Oh no!
We lost him.
I was too mean to him.
I just did that.
You
Did
did that?
I
somebody
don't
hit
know
him with the invisibility power up?
I don't know. He looked like he was looking off to the side at something.
We need to get him that internet boost power up we got to Cartoonicus.
Okay, here we go. Hang on. There you go. So, Catherine wants to know what I did. I don't know if I did anything.
Oh, hey, we meant to ask this earlier. Okay, I'm just going to ask this randomly. Does Hugh get burned by coffee or not in Power Up? We probably talked about that for 5 minutes.
That's right.
Yeah.
No,
I haven't read it in 10 years. I was learning about the book from you guys.
Okay, bring up the page.
How do you determine when to split a moment with 2 panels? So when he kisses his wife, is that purposeful to separate them, or is it varying the panels?
Let me see what you're talking. Do you have the panel up? I haven't.
Yeah, let me find it here quick.
Gotta bring it up.
It's
I'm not familiar with my own work. I do know that I split panels a lot.
Right, and that's what I'm trying to determine whether or not it's intentional to say, to separate the 2 characters or not.
There were definitely moments when we wondered if there was symbolism going on.
That was not a symbolic split. That
Okay.
was just graphical fun, I think. I'm not sure why I did that.
Well, it happens twice, and then at the end you have a single panel with the mother, with his wife and his son, and him hugging. And so, to me, like, the contrast is, I don't know.
Can you bring? Let me see. No, I know on that panel there where they're kissing, that was just a graphic.
Okay.
I'm not sure why I did that.
Yeah, there's two moments of it's fortunate. I think it's one of those times when you do something instinctively that works, because there's two times of intimacy that is split up like that, and then you have that two panels at the end of all three of the characters hugging.
Sometimes I do it. I would do it for visual reasons, like it looked cool to do that. And another thing is there's a lot of kind of animation in this story, and
I wondered about
so it shows a passage of time that she said the one thing and then went over and gave him a kiss, you know? So it's kind of
There it is, page 61.
very weird.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that we were kind of noticing, and like I said, whether it was intentional or not, in the first set of panels, it's when you're developing the intimacy between the characters,
Yeah.
the husband and wife, and then and at this point is when Hugh is like really dedicated to like living the fantasy out of the power-ups, where it's not just trying it out anymore, where he's like, this is going to shape my life from here out. And that also seems to be the beginning of the separation that develops between them. Because
I don't think I did it to separate them. No, that's not a psychological separation. I'm pretty sure it's just a passage of time.
Yeah, and I definitely can believe that, but it's just interesting that it seems to tie in whether you meant it to or not, right?
Yeah.
It's a byproduct of thinking about it as animation, in that animation way, because if you're animating panels, then naturally you split them up. The passage of time makes that.
Yeah, I was very conscious of that in this book, for sure, of passage of time. It was very movement and animating, and there's a lot of like multiple arms on the characters and stuff, as I recall.
Yeah. No, I've not read. I like to read your stories for the story and not really analyze things deeply, but on a creative, from a creative point of view, when you do a panel, is that one snapshot of time? So then the breaking up of the panels is necessary for like another action to take place within that panel. So like the panel would have to be broken up for them to talk again.
Yeah. I mean, I break those rules all the time, but I do have a kind of it's the only way that you can pace a story is by breaking out panels to slow it down. So, I didn't even have to show him running in on the right. But I think I wanted to show his expression of the longing of coming to them with a smile first.
Yeah. Well, and the benefit of that is like you see that transition in expression for Hugh from the smile down here to where he's just that peaceful, pacified aspect.
Yeah.
And you
like
wouldn't
a passage of time in a just separate moment, and it shows that it makes, like, I don't like when people read graphic novels fast. I think you should really sit on a frame and
I'm in trouble.
I know people zip through these in 15 minutes, and it's just not by design. It's not the way it's supposed to go.
I was just fascinated the whole time. I kept wanting to turn the page.
Yeah, I did it on a first read especially. You're not supposed to study it. It's supposed to be just a story or whatever, but like when I read, I try and find out what the artist's intention is for the pace. And a lot of times they'll deliberately be changing time with their paneling.
Well, and that's one of that's I guess one of the things that I really appreciate about your work in comics in general, but I think you're just a really good example of this, is that there's so much benefit from subsequent readings. Because your stories really draw you in, but then going back over it again, there's like lots of that manipulation of time subtext that can play in with it really well. And I really appreciate that as well, to be able to go back and revisit those and feel like I'm experiencing it again in a way that not every comic story has that complexity to it.
Yeah, it's just
Visual.
it's not that they have to study it. Just it should take a couple minutes, and you'll look
Yeah.
at it and then move on to the next moment, kind of thing.
With your
So-
use of silhouette, is that another way to vary things up, or is
Yeah.
there?
So all
Do
of
you-
that, all of the black, that's called spotting blacks.
Right.
I would make sure that there's some amount of black on each panel. I always say to hold it down. You know, it
Yeah,
keeps it
works
from.
against negative space.
Twitless brought this up, Doug, and I think I'd love to pick your brain about it. So Twitless observed that Power Up and Earthboy Jacobus both have an ending where everything seems to be ending on a happy little note, and then there's a twist where there's like a note of sadness at the end. So
Yeah.
in Earthboy Jacobus, it's the aliens attacking. In Power Up, it's the realization that Hugh's probably going to lose the rights to Earth Dog Jim,
Yeah.
right? And so Twitless's observation is you're using, Christian redemption as a theme in a lot of your books, yet you're willing to have kind of a downer or a sour note at the end of your books. Is that conscious, or are you just like picking the ending that you think works?
It's very conscious, and even I last saw. Trying to think of my other books where I do a bittersweet ending on it, because all of them, to me, I try and put something, so it's not just sentiment, but shows that the story continues. So like on Creature Tech, that is why he's in silhouette at the end, it's the journey is beginning. But he's a new man, right? But not a man without any problems in his life.
Are you referring to this page, Doug?
Yeah, that page. That's the one. One that you own. But if you look at it, it's like now he's on a journey looking off, but he has a cross, right? So there's one change in that, primary change in that book. And so in Power Up, and Power Up's a very personal book. You guys talked about doing Rat Fist. That's another very personal book. They're very much about my own flaws and anger. So I would mask it right in a boppy kind of cartoony book like this. But it was a lot of the deals with the rights to Earthworm Jim and kind of dealing with not having them and my family. I had a family where I'm not sure what year this was, maybe 2009 or 2010, I think. What year was it?
I thought it was 10, but let me double check myself.
I think it's 10. So right around then, that's the end of my career, kind of thinking is what that is. And kind of, I was embracing my family as a better journey than video games and comic books and animation. All that I was kind of growing up right into that place. I think I was turning 40 years old. I was probably 40, I think 44 by then. So it's kind of putting the boyish things in their place. And so there's a distance between him and the character in the games by the end. It obviously doesn't, it's not the giant idol that it was for him at the beginning. And there's a lot of Kinko's stuff in there too, because I would always photocopy my work at Kinko's. And I always, when I was an artist starting out, I thought I could always get a job at Kinko's, was always the fallback for me. So that's kind of I'm setting brackets up where if he fails, he'll just end up being another Kinko's worker. And then if he succeeds, he's going to create this character and he end up probably becoming that boss at EA is kind of the threat.
Yeah.
And so the bittersweet is just like, even though you get your wish and you're quote unquote saved, that your journey begins, and it's bittersweet because no Christian's journey ends with salvation. It's like, that's when oftentimes the true drama and misery comes in, when you're really aware of this truth suddenly, and you realize, like, everything didn't get perfect. You know, I'm going to heaven and everything, but I'm still here on earth, and this is a mess. And so that drama is going to continue for him. But I think we're more confident that his heart is better set on a foundation to be able to handle whatever's coming.
So am I right in my theory that this is your origin story pre-Earthworm Jim?
I mean, it's not strictly so, but there's obviously a lot of that in it. Like everything that he experiences and feels are things that I experienced and felt. Pedestrian jobs, and you have a wish and you have this idea, but you don't think you'll ever be able to pull it off. And maybe you start looking at cheats. What can you do to get that opportunity? So I think all of us start with pragmatism, start compromising our values when you can just shave a corner and get what you want.
Part of what we discussed, mostly me, is how we can only look at your career and your work from the outside. Obviously, we're not you. We can't think of it that same way. And so at least for me, I look at this character and I can't see that as you, the guy that's afraid to put out his work, the guy that's afraid to do what he wants. It's like, it's so foreign to who you've been over the totality of your career.
Yeah. That's probably true.
It seems so weird.
That's probably true that's not like me, but so they're not completely autobiographical. It was just if I wanted to do a comic book that takes place in a world where video games are real, then I have a lot to say about that. And it's about family and how you treat other people. And, you know, the bad guy is literally a video game bad guy come to life, like your dream becomes your nightmare. So it's more loose than that. And and I will take liberties on characters where they're not me at all. Same with Creature Tech, you know, he's very much me, but he is also very much not me. And the same thing with all my villains. They tend to have my internal dialogue. You know, if it's some kind of this video game boss character, that's very much a part of me also, you know, and including his Mr. Krikorian. Those were all real people that I knew, by the way. All these people are real people. Yeah. And the wife, like, I think she's laying down on a bed or something. And I actually used my wife as a model for that. She's curled up on the couch.
It is interesting.
You guys are so cute.
But, you know, my wife's a brunette. She doesn't look anything like that person. And I don't look anything like this guy, you know. In fact, I think I look more like his weirdo friend. That's how I always drew myself in my own comic work, the big lips and the buggy eyed and the tube head.
We started out by saying that these two characters kind of put together more represent you.
Yeah, very much.
Just one on their own. What was the other question I was going to say? The one of the things that stands out about this book is the villain is mostly himself, like all the way throughout, which includes the video game character, like how you just said. And I thought about that earlier, is that like really the outside threat is very minimal in this. It's almost all him.
Well, the villain, I mean, there is a threat there in that if he got his way, he could destroy the world. I mean, with that kind of power, you see, and probably just because the book is so terse and small and short that I probably didn't have the time to build out. Someone in the chat said that it reminded them of Tron, and I had done a story pass on Tron when they were going to originally reboot it. All of this was before all of that. All of this script existed before. I was pitching video game movie ideas because Hollywood was asking for them. And I would pitch to Henson. I pitched to a number of different places. They ended up doing, like Adam Sandler's company did Click. It was before that. And it was supposed to be a giant war on Earth. But there's no way I was going to draw that. I was trying to finish this book in 3 months, I think. Write it and illustrate it in 3 months. So I was just working fast. It's very cartoony. All of this art is like a ripoff of Calvin and Hobbes. If you look at the hands and the clothing and the spotting blacks and even that little car, I think I got almost a lot of it the iconography in this is from Calvin and Hobbes.
We've always noticed the influence in your work from them.
Yeah, he's really heavy in my work. And I also have a lot of other concept artists where I have in this private kind of art file that I would always keep photocopies of great concept designers and even classic illustrators. And that's probably where I got the design for the girl from too, is probably some classic animators. You know, I buy the little sketchbooks at Comic-Con of concept artists and stuff that do their own work, little guys that no one's ever heard of. And I just go, man, that's the best art I've ever seen. And I'll buy it and go, I'm going to use that girl, you know, that figure in my drawing.
Very cool.
Is this the second to last book, and then Rat Fist would be the last Image book?
Yeah. Because after this, after Rat Fist, I started doing, I think it was Ghostopolis was my first Scholastic book.
And did you do all the Scholastic stuff digital?
Not newts. I did traditional.
Was that for speed or?
Yeah, I don't know why I ever decided to do it. Ghostopolis, I think I bought a Cintiq, and Ethan Nicole taught me. I think Flink is around here too, right? Probably just before this one, maybe.
I got
2008, I think.
2007 is the copyright date.
Okay. Yeah, I have no idea why I went digital with it. It's really weird, but Ethan taught me Manga Studio, and then I did Ghostopolis. That was 2010 also that I started that. Because I read Michael Ward's Planet Narnia, and that's why I wrote Ghostopolis. It was based on that book.
So Hutch here has only read Power Up. What should he read next?
I'm actually bidding on a lot of 3 graphic novels: Cardboard, Bad Island, and Ghostopolis.
Ooh.
For $6. Nobody bid against me.
Dude, get it. Are you kidding me?
Wow, that's a steal.
That's a steal, man. That's
a steal with the covers falling off. That's what that is.
Well, it's a bidding war, and there's 3 days left, and it's shipping from UK. So
I'll just say all 3 of those books I have bought multiple times to give away as gifts. Like whenever I see one of those books for sale in a used situation, I buy it and give it to somebody.
Yeah.
I find
cheap.
somebody.
You can get them cheap because they made, especially the Scholastic books, because those, like for instance, Power Up would have maybe a 5,000 print run. Ghostopolis' first print run, I can't remember if it was 25,000 or 50,000 books. So that was part of why I went with Scholastic, was because they can sell it into schools. My print runs went from 5,000 to 50,000 on some of those books.
Wow.
And they did like 4 printings on some of those books. So those are big numbers. And I was just looking to expand my audience because I was frustrated with, I love Image. Image has always treated me very well. So I got no complaints with Image at all. But it was just the size. It was so small. And I felt like my books were not penetrating into kind of the superhero comic book stores.
Yeah.
So I had to get outside of Image. And so that's when I went for Scholastic.
Of the Image books, Iron West seems to be the hardest one to come by.
That and Monster Zoo, probably.
Right.
It's hard. I'm giving all the art away to this book, by the way. All of my books. I'm doing an art show next year in Moscow, Idaho. I think it's in May. And I'm doing an art show with all of my work is going to be pinned to the wall. We're doing like thousands of pieces. And at the end of the show, I'm giving all the work to whoever comes.
So
all of my
year.
original comic book pages. So it's got Creature Tech. There's, I don't know if Iron West is in there. One of my books I lost. So that happened when I shipped it to Canada they scanned it and they never got it back to me. I can't remember which one it was, but
I'm surprised FlyFox Pro hasn't like zipped off the screen like a cartoon sound effect to run here quickly.
I don't remember, but I got stacks of the art. It's all over there. So,
Well, I mean, I'd love to go to Moscow, but I already showed you. I have the only page of your art that I would have, would have fought somebody for.
Just get a friend. Just get a friend to go to the show and have them pick one up. There you go.
So Marcus is living up there. I'll probably just have him over, right?
Yeah,
I have connections. So have somebody go get him, pick something up for me.
Oh, Ryan Drew got some of the Newt pages last year. Yeah, my people.
The 2 Earthworm Jim books are going for $225. Holy cow!
What a steal!
Wow.
You should be able to get them for cheaper than that.
Sometimes it just depends on what's available at the time too when it comes to eBay. But
Yeah.
I mean, I've got them, but you can't. I won't give them to you.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I have the original first Bigfoot bill, and then I have the reprint too. And it's like, I'm not going to give away the original because it's different, so I can't give it away.
Different.
That's right.
And they're rare. I mean, if you think about it, I don't know how many of these books will stand the test of time. As far as, I mean, not that people will want them, but in the future, those books had like maybe a 3,000 print run. That's a really small print run for how, and it's a hardbound book. That thing's going to last forever.
Yeah, I was when it came time to when you re-released Bigfoot Bill 1 with the second one with the supplemental materials in it, I really agonized over it because I dislike buying a thing more than once.
Yeah,
but
I'm cheap too. I get it.
But I was just like, at the same time, I was like, it's got bonus materials in it, and we kind
I
of
made it worth it. I made it worth it.
You did.
Worth
So then I was like, well, maybe I could sell the original one, and then I sat them down on my table next to each other, and I was like, nah, it just goes back on the shelf.
I love those. Getting to print my own stuff, man. I get to show every publisher what I really want to do. It's like this is what I would do.
Yeah,
I love it. I really love. It's an honor to get to do that. I should say, honor and a privilege. So,
they definitely are amazing pieces. That's for sure. So,
well, I don't want to keep you guys. I mean, you can wrap it up if you want. You guys have
well,
any other questions?
it's the truth is we were just about ready to do that. So,
but then we got a chance to pick your brain. So.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
You were able to show
come
it. That's like, and you bring on the author at the end.
You were like the final boss.
That's the final boss.
That's the fact. And everybody had questions, so I want to make sure everybody had a chance to ask them. So.
Yeah, I hope you can get a chance to go back and actually watch our 2 hours of talking about this and all the questions we raised.
I don't tend to watch 2-hour shows, but a show about my book, I might have to consider that twice.
Yeah,
it's funny that providentially Krotz left right before you showed up. So.
Oh, I was going to say, where's Grouchy Matt? Where's
like
Grouchy
10 minutes?
Matt?
It was like 10 minutes before you got here. He took off. So
that's funny. I wouldn't have known about it if he didn't retweet it. So he's the one who told me about this. So
that's hilarious.
Give him some appreciation on Twitter.
Yep. That's great. So anyway, we'll call that the show for tonight. Thank you guys for tuning in. Like I said, next week's show is to be determined. I'm waiting to hear back from some people. So and that's it. Until next time. Get out there and read some comics. Yeah. That's the ticket. Bye.